Chapter 434. In fact, although these 20 people all had the same thought and thought that Nye Qianyu was not the legendary beauty, they would definitely not be willing to withdraw from the competition. Why was that? It was simple. Although Nye Qianyu's looks were average, she had delicate features and wasn't ugly. Moreover, her two older sisters were very beautiful. How bad could the younger sister be when she grew up? Thinking like this now was only because the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Most importantly, Valley Lord Nye had 3 daughters and no children. Nye Qianrong and Nye Qianxiu were already married and weren't in the valley. If the youngest daughter were to marry, it was obvious whether she would marry into the family or not. Moreover, Valley Lord Nye was going to find a son-in-law through a martial arts competition. Although he didn't explicitly say that he wanted to find a son-in-law who came from the family, who in the Jianghu didn't know that he wanted to find someone who was strong in martial arts and could control the situation to take charge of Rejuvenation Valley. As long as he could win this martial arts competition, he would be the future master of Rejuvenation Valley. Who wouldn't be envious of Rejuvenation Valley's thousands of years of foundation? Who would give up because Nye Qianyu wasn't exceptionally beautiful? The wife needs to be virtuous and the concubine needs to be beautiful. Just find a few more concubines in the future. Everyone thought so. The 3 Nye sisters rode their horses to the back of the arena and climbed up the ladder. The guards at the side hurriedly found 3 chairs and sat down next to Valley Lord Nye. The 3 didn't look at the people below the arena and only looked at the 2 people on the arena with concern. Zhang Xiaohua raised her eyes and didn't say anything. Young Master Long was different. The 3 Nye sisters didn't appear when the first 20 people won, but they appeared when he was about to win. Nye Qianyu even personally came to the arena. What did this mean? Young Master Long was a little smug and couldn't help but nod slightly at Nye Qianyu. He smiled, showing the peerless elegance of a dandy young master. At this time, Valley Master Nye quietly told Nye Qianyu about the situation at the scene and asked for her opinion. Nye Qianyu smiled slightly and muttered in her heart, "Others may not know the details of this little thief, but how can I not know?" Outside of Tanha City, half of his opponent's body was smashed into pieces with just one sword strike. That strength and internal energy are inconceivable. Although the Soaring Dragon Sword Manner's internal energy cultivation method is powerful, I reckon that it is not as powerful as that Hall Master from that day. This little thief probably knows that his sword technique is not good enough and he doesn't want to harm people's lives, so he came up with such a method. Humph, on this journey, from Tanha City to Worry City, I have never seen him suffer a single loss. If this young Master Long is able to take advantage of a large sum of money from him, even if you beat me to death, I would not believe it. Thinking of this, a sweet smile appeared on her face. Coincidentally, when Mr. Dragon saw the smile on Nye Qianyu's face, he thought that she was smiling at him. His heart tightened. This girl can't escape from me. However, below the stage, there were 2 people who had met Nye Qianyu before. They had strange expressions on their faces, and no one knew what they were thinking. After receiving Nye Qianyu's encouragement, Mr. Dragon became even more forthright. He smiled and said, "Since little brother is so straightforward, I can't let you have all the fun. How about this? We don't need to exchange one move for another. This will obviously make little brother suffer a loss. Let's just stand here and exchange 3 moves. Whoever moves his feet even half an inch will lose. What do you think?" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's eyes lit up. This was a real contest of martial arts. No matter what moves or techniques were used, they would all be useless. This was what everyone wanted to see the most. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she could not help but frown. But what if both of our feet don't move, or if both of our feet move? How will it be counted? Mr. Dragon smiled and said, "Then it will be counted as my loss." These words were said cleanly, and his voice was loud. Everyone below the stage heard it. "Good." The crowd shouted again. Mr. Dragon had not started the contest, but he had already won the crowd's support. It was as if everyone wanted him to win. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua did not speak, Nye Qianxiu could not help but frown. She whispered to Nye Qianrong, "Big sister, I think Ren Xiaoxia doesn't seem to have any spirit. If it were someone else, they would definitely say, 'How can I let Mr. Dragon suffer a loss?' If both of their feet move, or if they don't move, it will be a draw. Even if they have a few more moves, it's fine. Why doesn't Ren Xiaoxia say anything?" Nye Qianyu, who heard this, couldn't help but laugh out loud. She thought to herself, this little thief likes to take advantage of others. Since young Master Long has delivered himself to his door, how could he refuse? When Nye Qianrong saw her sister laughing, she did not answer Nye Qianxiu's question. She just watched attentively. As expected, Zhang Xiaohua heard this and smiled faintly. Okay, then we'll do as Mr. Dragon says. Ah, this guy is not polite at all. Mr. Dragon thought so too. Therefore, the two of them took a step forward and stood face to face. Seeing this, the crowd held their breaths and did not dare to make a sound. Mr. Dragon took a deep breath and circulated his internal energy through his meridians. His face was a little red, and his eyes were shining. He said, "Little brother, are you ready?" Zhang Xiaohua was lazy. She shrugged and said, "Mr. Dragon can make his move at any time." Mr. Dragon saw this and was overjoyed. This guy is really inexperienced. He thought that I would give him more time to circulate his qi when he saw me giving him a chance. Unfortunately, I've already asked you. What does it have to do with me whether you circulate your qi or not? Then the clothes on his body could not move. His right hand suddenly swung out from his side. It brought a strong wind and hit Zhang Xiaohua's chest. Zhang Xiaohua had already released his divine sense. He was not nervous at all when he saw the fist that contained a large amount of internal energy. He stretched out his left hand and grabbed young Master Long's wrist at lightning speed. Then, he used a little force and pulled it to his left. Young Master Long was shocked. He quickly wanted to withdraw his internal energy. However, he only wanted to fight with Zhang Xiaohua. How could he hold back? With a wave of Zhang Xiaohua's left arm, young Master Dragon rose from the ground like a lone goose and was thrown out of the arena with a whoosh. Wasn't this the move that Nye Xiaoer used to deal with Zhang Xiaohua in the Huanxi Villa, 4 tails against 1,000 caddies? This. The crowd was stunned. Does this mean that Ren Xiaoyao won? Just now it was said that it was a fist against fist. Although Ren Xiaoyao made a move, he didn't exchange blows with his opponent. But Mr. Dragon also said that as long as he moved his feet, he would lose. Now, not only did he move his feet, he was thrown out of the arena. How does this count? Valley Master Nye's face was also full of astonishment. He never thought that this would happen. Only Nye Qianyu smiled so sweetly. Yes, only Ren Xiaoyao could do such a move that even she did not expect. Mr. Dragon was also amazing. Although his body was thrown out of the arena and he could not borrow any force, the moment his feet touched the ground, he immediately turned around and flew back into the arena. He stood in a corner of the arena. He did not know what to say. Yes, after all, he was thrown out of the arena. After all, his feet had touched the ground. He had already lost. But he thought for a moment and immediately changed his expression. He sneered, "Little brother, you are a good schemer. You said that it was a fist exchange. Where did your fist go? You want to use such an underhanded method to make me fall into your trap? If you want to use fighting skills, just say it. Why did you say it was a fist against fist?" Valley Master Nye heard and was about to stand up. But Nye Qianyu pulled him back and whispered, "Father, let's see how they continue. Don't say anything." Nye Qianyu said loudly, "Although Mr. Dragon fell out of the arena, Ren Xiaoxia did not follow the rules. Mr. Dragon did not lose." Nye Qianrong was a little surprised and looked at her strangely. Nye Qianyu quickly explained, "Big sister, if Ren Xiaoxia wins, he should win fair and square, right?" Nye Qianrong nodded thoughtfully. Seeing Mr. Dragon's reproach, Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head and said, "Mr. Dragon seems to have misunderstood. I only said 3 moves against 3 moves. I didn't say 3 fists against 3 fists. Your punch was a move, and my hand pulling was also a move. How could young Master Long say that I didn't win fair and square? What if I used a schemer?" Hearing this, not only Mr. Dragon, but everyone in the arena was speechless. Yes, now that they thought about it, Zhang Xiaohua had always said 3 moves and not 3 fists. Even Mr. Dragon said 3 moves. But it was very common in Jianghu to meet force with force. Everyone took it for granted that the 3 moves were 3 fists. Although Mr. Dragon said 3 moves, he still thought 3 fists in his heart. Alas, it had to be said that habitual thinking killed people. This. Mr. Dragon was speechless. Nye Qianyu smiled like a flower. It was as if she already knew that this would happen. Valley Master Nye was also secretly happy in his heart. This future son-in-law, he really has a brain. The gaze with which he looked at Zhang Xiaohua became even gentler and kinder. Seeing young Master Long's reaction, Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, then cupped his hands and said, "If young Master Long thinks that I didn't explain it clearly and played a trick, then I apologize." When I saw young Master Long's fierce fist wind, my left hand naturally chose this move. It was purely a natural reaction. Because I usually compete with others like this, I really didn't think too much about it. How about this? Since Mr. Dragon is not convinced, the move just now doesn't count. How about we start again? Mr. Dragon thought for a while and said, "I won't take advantage of you. The move just now was a draw. But the next two moves can't be the same as before. We can only fight one fist. What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. You can say whatever you want." Sir Dragon humphed and walked to the center of the arena. After circulating his qi and preparing himself, he wasn't in a hurry to attack. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and took up a fighting stance. Just as he was about to throw out a punch, his divine sense seemed to sense something strange in Sir Dragon's left hand. Chapter 435. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and looked at young Master Long's left sleeve. "Young Master Long, we agreed that it would be 3 moves against 3 moves. Now let's change it to 3 fists against 3 fists. I was a little reckless just now. Although I used 4 tails against 1,000 Jin, I was still empty-handed. If I use any weapons again, I will admit defeat." Hearing this, young Master Long was shocked. How did this guy know that I have a dagger in my left hand? Originally, I wanted to throw away my face and injure him with a dagger. After all, I only said that I wouldn't use a sword, but I didn't say that I wouldn't use a dagger. Moreover, this guy broke the rules first. Even if I injured him, the second punch would only be a draw. However, if he was injured, I would definitely win the third punch. What should I do? I can only fight head-on. After thinking, young Master Long said righteously, "Little brother, are you warning me? Although my martial arts are not high, I do not have such dirty thoughts like you. You only need to worry about yourself. Don't make the same mistake again." Zhang Xiaohua smiled. He knew that young Master Long would not take out the dagger again. He raised his fist and punched at young Master Long's chest. Before practicing God traction, although Zhang Xiaohua had immortal Dao true qi flowing through his meridians, this true qi was used to perform incantations and cast spells. It could not be circulated in his meridians according to the changes in his fist moves like the internal force of martial arts. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua's only way to win was to use his heavy sword and great strength, using his tens of thousands of pounds of strength to forcefully resist his opponent's internal force. In God traction, it was recorded that one could use the inner strength of martial arts to imitate the inner strength of immortals. However, Zhang Xiaohua was able to easily learn how to use the inner strength of immortals to imitate the inner strength of martial arts. Although Zhang Xiaohua already had a rough idea of how to do it, he still didn't have the chance to put it into practice. This arena was the perfect opportunity for him to give it a try. As Zhang Xiaohua punched out, the genuine qi in his body was also mobilized. A wisp of genuine qi went straight along the meridians in his arm and rushed to his fist. However, this was his first attempt. Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to use all of his strength. He only used 30%. In order to ensure that he would not lose, Zhang Xiaohua also used 30% of his strength at the same time. When young Master Long saw Zhang Xiaohua swinging her fist, he quickly put away the dagger in his left hand and transferred his internal energy to his right arm. He swung his right hand to meet the attack. However, young Master Long learned from his mistakes. This time, he did not dare to use all of his internal energy. He was careful and only used 90% of his internal energy, leaving 10% for himself. The two of them were very close to each other. In an instant, their fists collided with each other. A muffled pung sound was heard. Both of their figures swayed, and their clothes fluttered without any wind. Shwa! They fluttered backward. This second punch was actually a draw. Ah! Everyone below the arena was surprised. Young Master Long of the Soaring Dragon Sword Village was very famous. He was considered one of the most outstanding martial artists in the southern Wulin. Zhang Xiaohua, who just went up on stage, was not famous. In this head-on punch, he did not lose out at all. This was really unexpected. However, today was destined to be a day of great surprise. When young Master Long saw that Zhang Xiaohua and himself were evenly matched, he could not help but laugh loudly. Good, good, good. Little brother's ambition does not depend on age. You actually have such astonishing internal energy at such a young age. Since it's like this Long will not be polite. Come, come, come. Little brother, prepare yourself. This Long will go all out. Oh, I see. The others suddenly realized. Young Master Long is testing the waters with this punch. Sure enough, young Master Long once again circulated his energy. His aura was different from before. At first glance, his figure seemed to be bigger, and there was a faint light in his eyes. On the other hand, Zhang Xiaohua was even worse than before. She did not even circulate her energy anymore. Just from this warming-up action, her appearance was much worse. Young Master Long stared at Zhang Xiaohua, and said with a sinister smile, "Little brother, I'm going to punch." Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said, "Young Master Long, do as you please." Humph! Young Master Long snorted coldly. This guy must have never heard of the Soaring Dragon Heart Sutra. Then his right palm stretched out from his sleeve. It was actually golden in color. From top to bottom, it slapped down on Zhang Xiaohua's face. Zhang Xiaohua did not panic. She waited for the palm to come close before she stretched out her left palm. She did the blazing sky style and welcomed the attack. The Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique was a way to circulate one's inner energy. Using the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique as an example, it could be used to describe how domineering this mental cultivation technique was. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Under the control of the Soaring Dragon Mental Cultivation Technique, one's inner energy would be like a real dragon leaping into the 9 heavens. Of course, it was extremely difficult to cultivate such a powerful mental cultivation technique. Even though young Master Long was extremely intelligent and a genius in the path of cultivation, he had only cultivated to the 4th level of the mental cultivation technique. In other words, he was able to display 4 levels of force in one strike. It could be said that one strike from him was equivalent to 8 strikes from others. Therefore, if it wasn't for the fact that they didn't know, very few people would be like Zhang Xiaohua and directly exchange blows with him. This was also the reason why Valley Head Nie was worried in the beginning. Zhang Xiaohua's suggestion was simply tailor-made for young Master Long. Therefore, seeing Zhang Xiaohua so casually meeting the opponent, those who knew about young Master Long's background all had smiles on their faces as they waited for Zhang Xiaohua to put on a good show. Unfortunately, when the two palms collided, there was no longer the momentum from before. Instead, they silently joined together as if they were shaking hands. Under everyone's gaze, young Master Long's face was flushed red. The internal energy on his right palm courageously struck towards Zhang Xiaohua one after another. Zhang Xiaohua's face didn't change at all. Only her eyes were filled with a strange light as she muttered, "Strange, strange, interesting." Following young Master Long's right palm's overlaying force, Zhang Xiaohua also continuously transferred her vital energy into her left palm without batting an eyelid, matching the force of young Master Long's right palm. When young Master Long's second overlaying force began, Zhang Xiaohua was curious and had already transferred a strand of vital energy into young Master Long's meridians. She wanted to see the mystery of the Soaring Dragon cultivation method. The true energy of the Path of Immortals was marvelous. Before young Master Dragon had even used the 4th force, Zhang Xiaohua had already gained a basic understanding of the Soaring Dragon mantra. He knew the technique of stacking force, and Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but praise it in his heart. Attention is knowledge. The power of this martial art is limited, but under the shackles of limited power, There are all sorts of supplementary techniques that can be used to maximize the use of force. On the other hand, the true energy of the Path of Immortals only focuses on power. It's clumsy in the application of technique. If immortal vital energy is used with martial arts techniques, then what will happen? Zhang Xiaohua very naturally made the connection. At this time, young Master Long had already finished displaying the fourth force of the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method. Zhang Xiaohua was thinking about how to apply the overlaying force technique to immortal vital energy, and at the same time, she adjusted the power of the vital energy in her left hand to the fifth force of the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method. She still wanted to wait and see the other secrets of the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method. When Zhang Xiaohua adjusted the power in her left hand, it immediately showed that something was wrong. The fifth force of the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method should be twice the force of the fourth force. In other words, the internal energy in Zhang Xiaohua's hand was twice that of young Master Long's internal energy. This was already far beyond what young Master Long could withstand. Young Master Long only felt an inconceivable internal energy attack from Zhang Xiaohua's left hand, like a flood rushing into his right palm. There was no way for him to resist at all. Young Master Long's body was like a big injured bird, and in an instant, he was sent flying from the stage. Zhang Xiaohua released her vital energy, but did not encounter the same force as before. In her mind, she immediately knew that young Master Long had only mastered the fourth force of the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method. At this time, young Master Long had already been sent flying by the internal energy. Zhang Xiaohua did not pursue and attacked. She had already retracted her vital energy, and it flowed vigorously through her meridians. The entire arena was silent. Accident, it was really an accident. Many people could not believe it, and repeatedly rubbed their eyes to make sure that they were not seeing things. Young Master Long, who possessed the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method, was actually sent flying by a nameless nobody with a single palm strike. Was this real? Young Master Long fell off the stage, and with a beautiful flip, he steadily stood up. The vital energy in his body flowed, and after a full cycle, the stone in his heart was finally put down. He did not suffer any internal injuries. Of course, he did not suffer any injuries under such a strong internal energy. This was definitely because the young man on the stage had shown mercy. Not to mention the depth of his internal energy. Just the use of his internal energy was so skillful. Not only could he not be compared to him, even his father from the Soaring Dragon Sword Village, who had already cultivated the Soaring Dragon Cultivation method to the sixth stage, would find it hard to match him. Moreover, he had already been sent off the stage twice. Even if it was, would he still have the face to go back on the stage? Young Master Long thought it through clearly. Facing Zhang Xiaohua on the stage, he cupped his hands and said, "Ren Xiaoxia's martial arts are strong, this one admires him. This one is not his opponent, and was forced off the stage twice. This one is really ashamed. This one wishes that Ren Xiaoxia will be the sole champion. Everyone, this one will take his leave first, goodbye." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and pulled out the treasured sword that was stabbed into the ground. With a leap, he disappeared into the crowd. Not long after, from the side of the stage, dozens of horses galloped out. Following the main road out of the valley, they swaggered off. Young Master Long, who was the most popular candidate for the groom-finding martial arts competition, was actually the first to leave. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian. Chapter 436. The reason why Soaring Dragon Sword Village's young Master Long wanted to enter the arena on the last day was because he had 100% confidence. He wanted to tell his potential opponents that they had to hurry up and fight for the last qualification before the end because the last qualification was his. Of course, young Master Long did have the strength to do so. The Soaring Dragon Sword Village's sword techniques and the Soaring Dragon mental cultivation method were his assets that allowed him to look down on the crowd. The 2 months of competition went as young Master Long had expected. Many people knew that young Master Long was going to enter the arena on the last day, so they all rushed to obtain the qualification before the last day. In the last 3 days, only the last few people, perhaps because they came late or just found out about the news, had no choice but to compete with young Master Long for the last qualification. Without exception, they were all defeated by young Master Long. Young Master Long easily obtained all the victories. Now that they thought about it, young Master Long's announcement was an extremely brilliant strategy. Nonsense, if you set the time to enter the arena, Those who could fight with you would let you go. They were afraid of meeting you, so they all entered the arena early. Of course, the ones left behind were those who couldn't even withstand a single blow. Moreover, young Master Long had another idea. A reason for entering the arena on the last day. Perhaps only he himself knew the reason. However, this qualification that was guaranteed in the last 3 breaths of time was taken away by an unknown thin and tall young man. Moreover, he forced young Master Long out of the arena twice. It had to be said that this was a huge irony, a huge accident. Man proposes, God disposes. Apart from this sentence, there was no other suitable metaphor. Perhaps only the 2 people who were a little further to the east of the arena would not be surprised by this outcome. Seeing young Master Long and the others leave in a hurry, the crowd below the arena had not yet recovered from their shock. They heard Valley Master Nye on the arena stand up and shout, "Heroes who have obtained the qualification, the last qualification has been determined. It is Ren Xiaoxia. According to the previous rules, the final battle will be held in this arena in an hour. Heroes, please prepare well." After that, he led the 3 Nye sisters and several adjudicators out of the arena and back to the manor. Nye Qianyu also stood up and pretended to follow her father without looking at Zhang Xiaohua. Only Nye Qianxiu looked back at Zhang Xiaohua and frowned. Seeing that everyone had left, Zhang Xiaohua also jumped down from the stage. She picked up her long sword and walked to a corner of the arena. Then, she sat on the ground and closed her eyes in silence. At this moment, the arena was in chaos. There were more than 20 people who were going to participate in the final battle. Of course, they had to make preparations. However, there were even more people who were prepared to watch the final battle. These people had already noticed Zhang Xiaohua's behavior and wanted to get close to her. However, when they saw Zhang Xiaohua's unapproachable appearance, they all extinguished that thought. She was an expert who could even send young Master Long flying with a raise of her hand. Who knew if she had a strange temper? Moreover, the 3 super sects did not have any disciples that they were proud of. Perhaps Ran Baqian was one of them. Only they could cultivate such a young disciple with such high martial art skills. Thinking about his mysterious background, some people gave up on the idea of challenging Ran Baqian. Yuan Guohou saw that Zhang Xiaohua was resting at the side and wanted to pay her a visit. However, he was stopped by Zhang Xiaohua, who whispered in his ear. Yuan Guohou's expression changed several times. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua in surprise and then looked at the guards of Rejuvenation Valley. In the end, he stopped in his tracks. An hour was neither long nor short. Seeing that no one came to disturb her, Zhang Xiaohua was naturally very happy. She had accidentally peeked at a trace of the mystery of the soaring dragon mantra in the arena, and had not had the time to carefully comprehend it. Now was a good opportunity. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua stretched out her left hand and began to comprehend the soaring dragon mantra in her meridians. Young Master Long's soaring dragon mantra had only been cultivated to the 4th level. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua only understood the changes of the first 4 levels. However, this mantra was only a technique to circulate one's inner strength. Zhang Xiaohua only understood the mystery of the first 4 levels. From the 1st level to the 2nd level to the 3rd level to the 4th level, and even to the 8th and 9th level, there was only one basic technique, and that was how to superimpose. The difference between each level of mantra was only the control of different inner strength. As long as there was enough inner strength, more levels could be superimposed. Zhang Xiaohua's essential qi was different from the inner strength of martial arts. Once he understood this basic technique, he did not care about the levels of superimposition. With the essential qi in his meridians, he could simulate the soaring dragon mantra to the 10th level, or perhaps the 20th. However, was there any meaning to this? Just as she was thinking, she heard the sound of a gong on the arena. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and looked over. On the arena, Valley Master Nye was sitting in the middle. Beside him were the 3 Nye sisters and 2 tall and strong handsome men. From the looks of it, they must be Nye Qianrong and Nye Qianxiu's husbands. The few judges were also in their positions. Elder Yu Yan was standing at a corner of the arena, striking a gong and shouting, "The 23 heroes who have obtained the final qualifications, please come up to the arena." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she frowned and thought to herself, "Just now I left in a hurry and did not ask Valley Master Nye how the last round is going to be. Could it be one-on-one? Or a group fight?" Zhang Xiaohua stood up and slowly walked to the side of the arena. As usual, she stabbed her long sword into the ground and jumped up the arena. She crossed her arms and stood at the side. The other 22 people also came up to the arena one after another. Looking at the number of people, Elder Yu said in a clear voice, "The last round of the Rejuvenation Valley's joust for a spouse will now begin. The rules of this round are extremely simple. The 23 people on the arena will compete with each other. The last one left will be the final winner of this round." Then, looking at the crowd, he smiled and said, "There is only one request. After all, this is a joyous occasion. It is fine as long as no lives are lost. Whether it is a knife, a sword, or a hidden weapon, all are allowed. Of course, no poison is allowed. All right, this old man has finished speaking. Is there anyone else who has any questions?" After all, these rules were already known to everyone when the arena was first built. Of course, there wouldn't be any problems. Yu Yan looked at Zhang Xiaohua and saw that he was just standing there without saying anything. Yu Yan shouted, "All right, since everyone understands, we'll set the time limit as 2 hours. Let's start now." Then, the copper gong was struck again. Following the sound of the gong, more than 20 people were immediately divided into several small groups. Those who had some relationship with each other or those who had been in contact with each other after obtaining the qualifications all gathered together. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing alone in the corner of the arena, seemed a little out of place. Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head with her hand and suddenly squatted down. Her right index finger and middle finger joined together and drew a line on the arena in front of her. A neat semicircle arc that was 3 centimeters deep into the hardwood appeared on the arena. Then, Zhang Xiaohua stood up again. She shook her head and stood there with her arms crossed. Although the arena was built with wood, in order to adapt to the martial arts of the people of Jianghu, the wood of the arena was carefully selected. It was not inferior to the hard rock. Zhang Xiaohua's move showed her powerful martial arts and the intention to shock everyone. Secondly, it showed that they could just fight, and as long as they did not step into her arc, she would not interfere. When the others saw this, they were amazed by this young man's martial arts. How could they not understand what he meant? Therefore, when the fighting started, no one went forward to look for Zhang Xiaohua. Instead, they each found a small group that did not look very strong and eliminated them first. Therefore, compared to the people who were fighting fiercely in the arena, Zhang Xiaohua was even more different. On one side of the arena, Valley Master Nye and Nye Chenyu's eyes never left Zhang Xiaohua. His every move was in their eyes. At this time, when they saw Zhang Xiaohua's very profound move, they nodded happily. This guy really likes to take advantage of others. At this point, he still wants to profit from the fight. Actually, how could the others not know what Zhang Xiaohua was thinking? It was just that he had just defeated Mr. Long easily. Now that his momentum was at its peak, the others were not willing to go against him easily. However, in the time it took to have a meal, the people on the arena gradually decreased. These small groups that were gathered together had differences in strength. Once the fight started, those who were slightly weaker were easily eliminated. At this time, there were only 3 small groups of 4 people left on the arena and Zhang Xiaohua was all alone. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua no longer held back. He put down his arm and prepared to face the enemy. Sure enough, 4 of them looked at each other and rushed towards Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua released his divine sense and watched the 4 people's movements carefully. He did not panic and waited for the 4 people to close in. He slipped and found a gap in the 4 people's encirclement. He only leaned sideways and stretched out his hand and gently tapped on one of the people's armpits. The person next to him saw Zhang Xiaohua approaching and quickly changed his move. He held his long sword horizontally and wanted to block him. Who knew that Zhang Xiaohua jumped high and stepped on the back of the long sword? With a kachup sound, the sword had already broken into 2 pieces. At the same time, before the person could react, Zhang Xiaohua's fingerwind had already reached him. The 2 people next to him saw that the situation was not good and wanted to retreat. How could Zhang Xiaohua give them a chance? His figure floated in the air and appeared in front of them. He raised both his palms and his palms contained the 2 layers of the soaring dragon heart technique. The 2 people saw that Zhang Xiaohua's palms were fast and fierce and without thinking, they raised their palms to meet it. When the huge amount of internal energy rushed towards their arms, they realized that young Master Long had been sent flying by this person's palms. Unfortunately, It was too late for them to realize. The people on and off the stage saw Zhang Xiaohua's palms move and the two people flew out of the stage and fell into the dust. In the time it took for sparks to fly off a piece of flint, Zhang Xiaohua defeated 4 people. Chapter 437. The remaining 8 people in the arena had long been divided into 2 groups. They stood to the side to watch the outcome of the fight between Zhang Xiaohua and the 4 people. When they saw that Zhang Xiaohua had easily won, their eyes were filled with astonishment. Just now, the 20-plus people on the stage had been divided into several groups and fought in pairs. They had used up a lot of energy and thought before they barely managed to obtain a victory. However, it could be seen that the other party with just 1 person had defeated 4 people in a single move. The gap between them was quite obvious. Thus, the 4 people in the group looked at each other and nodded at the same time. They waved their long swords and attacked the other 4 people. Obviously, they planned to defeat these 4 people first and then free up their hands to deal with Zhang Xiaohua. When the 4 people saw this, they also agreed. With a loud shout, they spread out and each chose an opponent to fight. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised. She had thought that these 8 people would join forces to deal with her, but they had actually started fighting on their own. This was really out of her expectations and looked very strange. However, doing so would only benefit her and not harm her. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua still stood to the side and watched the fight with interest. After watching for a while, Zhang Xiaohua gradually saw some clues. The 4 people who had fought first were obviously more skilled than the other 4. Moreover, these 4 people seemed to have practiced joint attacks before. Sometimes, 2 people would work together, sometimes 3 people would work together, but they were still able to handle the situation with ease. Could it be that these 4 people were sent by a certain faction? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but think. If this was the explanation, it was very reasonable. That faction had failed to kill Nie Qianyu and was unable to seize the treasure in her hands. It just so happened that Rejuvenation Valley was holding a martial arts competition to find a spouse, so they took the opportunity to send out suitable disciples. If they succeeded, not only would they achieve their previous goal, but they would also obtain Rejuvenation Valley's great foundation. What a good plan, what a good plan. Zhang Xiaohua cupped her chin in her hand and secretly praised. Valley Head Nie's scheme of building one path in the guise of building another path in the dark is really quite smelly now. That's right. Valley Head Nie loved his daughter so much that he didn't thoroughly consider the matter before hastily implementing it. If it weren't for Zhang Xiaohua's occasional appearance, this farce really might have destroyed the entire Rejuvenation Valley. While Zhang Xiaohua was thinking, the situation on the stage became clear. She saw one of the people in the ring using the long sword in his hand. He actually used the tip of the sword to hit several of his opponent's major acupoints and won. As for the other 3 people, seeing that the situation was over, they had no choice but to abandon their swords and admit defeat, jumping off the stage. After that, the 4 of them rested for a while before they picked up their swords and surrounded Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua also walked out of the semicircle that she had just drawn and slowly walked to the center of the stage. Her expression was still indifferent. The 4 of them stared fiercely at Zhang Xiaohua. When they saw an opportunity, they brandished their swords at the same time and swarmed forward. Zhang Xiaohua did not have a long sword in her hand, and it was not convenient for her to take out a short sword. Thus, she could only face the enemies with her bare hands. The 4 people's joint attack technique was also very good. In a short period of time, Zhang Xiaohua was unable to find any obvious flaws. She could only use the Fist of the North Star to face the enemies while using the ethereal steps to dodge. The 5 of them fought in a dazzling manner on the stage. Under the joint attack of the 4 people, Zhang Xiaohua was twisting and turning, displaying the excellence of her light body technique. However, when Zhang Xiaohua saw an opening, she punched out. It was precisely the face of one of the 4 people. That person had already brandished his sword, and it was already too late for him to save her. However, that person was not nervous and only took a few steps back. The other 3 people immediately followed up and stabbed their swords at Zhang Xiaohua's vital points. This forced Zhang Xiaohua to have no choice but to defend or dodge. There were even a few times when Zhang Xiaohua had clearly used her light body technique to escape from the encirclement of the 4 people. However, she did not know how the 4 of them changed. 2 of them rolled a few times and immediately trapped Zhang Xiaohua in the middle of the 4 people. This disrupted Zhang Xiaohua's plan of defeating them individually. This kind of formidable joint attack technique seemed to be different from the method used to deal with the other 4 people. Zhang Xiaohua's heart couldn't help but shiver, immediately retracting her previous underestimation. Releasing her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua continued to fight while carefully observing the changes in the 4 people's footwork and joint attack technique. As time passed, Zhang Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved. These 4 people's coordination and the changes in their positions seemed very familiar. Thinking carefully, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but be shocked. How was this a joint attack technique? This was obviously a basic immortal formation. The Daiyan 5 Elements Formation. The Daiyan 5 Elements Formation was formed by 5 talismans. Each talisman could cooperate with each other to produce endless changes, trapping the things in the formation. These 4 people had just replaced the talismans with people. The changes of the 4 people's coordination were basically the changes of the Daiyan 5 Elements Formation. However, for some reason, there were only 4 people here, and not the 5 people required by the Daiyan 5 Elements Formation. The 3 Talents Formation and the Daiyan 5 Elements Formation were the foundation of the Immortal Formation. It was also recorded in Fire Dragon Immortal's Jade Slip. Zhang Xiaohua had already studied it thoroughly when she was on the deserted island. Now, after comprehending the rabbit talisman in her Mud Pill Palace, Zhang Xiaohua had a considerable understanding of the Immortal Formation. Previously, she didn't see through it because she was bound and didn't know how to break it. Now that she understood it, and this Daiyan 5 Elements Formation was only an incomplete one, of course, it wouldn't be difficult for Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and saw a flaw in the formation. With a flash, he appeared between 2 of them. The 2 of them did not panic and only separated slightly, dodging the space. The other 2's long swords also stabbed at him at the same time. Zhang Xiaohua leaped up again and dodged the long swords. Then, while he was in mid-air, he did not use any force to move his body to the side. After that, he did not do anything and his body rapidly fell. At this time, the 4 of them moved their feet and the place where Zhang Xiaohua landed happened to be empty. When Zhang Xiaohua landed, the 5 of them formed a circle. It was a complete 5 elements great formation. The 2 men beside Zhang Xiaohua were shocked when they saw Zhang Xiaohua land on the ground. They quickly moved and wanted to change the formation. However, Zhang Xiaohua stood still and blocked the position of one of the men. That man had no choice but to stab with his sword. However, the sword didn't pierce into the formation and didn't cause any changes in the formation. Therefore, although the other 3 men were in their respective positions, they couldn't attack according to the changes in the formation. This created a situation where one of them stood alone against Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing that her strategy was effective, Zhang Xiaohua laughed loudly. She raised her sword and stretched out her left hand at lightning speed. Her thumb and index finger pinched the tip of the sword. Then, she turned sideways and pointed her right hand at the man's major acupoint on his chest. Before Zhang Xiaohua's finger reached him, the 3 men beside her couldn't stand it anymore. Their bodies swayed and they stabbed with their swords. This stab wasn't a big deal, but the whole broken 5 elements great formation was immediately deformed. Without the protection of the 5 elements great formation, the 4 men were not much different from the 4 men who had just pounced on Zhang Xiaohua. They saw that Zhang Xiaohua had abandoned the man just now and waved her palm at the 2 men who were pouncing at the furthest. The 2 men didn't expect that Zhang Xiaohua would attack them first, so they quickly changed the direction of their swords and pointed at Zhang Xiaohua's wrist. Zhang Xiaohua exerted force on her feet and her figure flashed to the front of the 2 men. Her 2 hands grabbed the air and it was precisely the 2 men's wrists. The 2 men couldn't dodge in time and were caught by Zhang Xiaohua. Immediately, their whole body went numb and their swords fell on the ring with a clang. Zhang Xiaohua didn't show any mercy. With a little force of her arms, the 2 men were thrown out of the ring like they were riding on clouds until they were caught by the people below the ring. Their whole body could still move slightly. When the other 2 men saw that their companion was thrown out of the ring, they didn't say much. At the same time, they took out hidden weapons from their arms and waved their hands to shoot at Zhang Xiaohua's face. Zhang Xiaohua let out a cold snort from her nose. She lowered her body and dodged it. Then, she went straight to attack the 2 men. However, she had just taken a few steps when her divine sense saw that the hidden weapon that had just been shot turned around in the air and shot directly at the back of her neck. It turned out to be a hidden weapon that was relatively rare in Jianghu. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She ignored it and continued to wave her fists to attack the 2 men. When the 2 men saw this, They laughed in their hearts. This young man is indeed inexperienced. Therefore, they pulled themselves together and went up to meet her. They only wanted to delay for a moment and wait for the hidden weapon to shoot back. When Zhang Xiaohua came close, the hidden weapon was also close to the back of her neck. They saw that Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have eyes at the back of her head. She suddenly shrunk her neck and lowered her body. That hidden weapon actually brushed past her head and hit empty air. As for the opponent in front of Zhang Xiaohua, he was complacently waiting to see the appearance of Zhang Xiaohua being hit by the hidden weapon. However, he was caught off guard by the hidden weapon that Zhang Xiaohua had dodged and was shot directly in the face. Seeing that the hidden weapon was about to reach his body, there was no time to dodge. That person's eyes immediately flashed with fear. He opened his mouth and was about to shout. Unfortunately, that hidden weapon had already hit his face. In an instant, purplish-black blood flowed out from the injured face. On that person's face, there was a drop of black at first. Very quickly, it spread like a dark cloud and covered his entire face. Then, that black line was like a poisonous snake baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, spreading towards his neck. This hidden weapon was actually dipped in a strong poison. Seeing this situation, Zhang Xiaohua was enraged. These two people really wanted to kill her. They knew that the arena did not allow the use of poison, but at the last moment, they used such a vicious hidden weapon. This was intolerable. As for Zhang Xiaohua's last opponent, because he was standing a little further away, when the hidden weapon came flying back, he had enough time to dodge. That poisonous hidden weapon brushed past his head and flew out of the arena. But just as he was rejoicing in his heart, he saw Zhang Xiaohua's figure flashed and like a ghost, she suddenly appeared in front of him. She grabbed onto the acupuncture point on his chest, not giving him any room to dodge. Zhang Xiaohua, who had grabbed onto her opponent, did not stop at all. With a flick of her hand, that person quickly chased after the hidden weapon that had just been shot out of the arena. In an instant, he had already overtaken it and landed on the ground. That position was exactly where the hidden weapon had been shot out from. With a soft pu sound, the poisonous hidden weapon had shot right into that person's neck. In an instant, purplish-black blood flowed out and that person fell onto the ground with a pu tong, unable to move anymore. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian. Chapter 438. The arena had been set up for more than 2 months. During this period, there had been bloodshed. However, the rules of the arena had already stated that if anyone lost their life, they would be disqualified immediately. Moreover, those who had come to the arena for a spouse were all here for a joyous occasion. Who would want to risk their lives for no reason? Therefore, in these 60 days, no one had lost their life. However, at the last moment, not only did 2 people lose their lives, but the most hated hidden weapon had also appeared. Immediately, the entire arena was in an uproar. All the adjudicators in the ring stood up in unison, while the crowd below the ring began to clamor loudly. Some of the adjudicators in the corner even drew their weapons, and some of them were ready to fight. Valley Master Nye was a man of character. He immediately stood up and waved his hand towards the manor. A bugle horn sounded from the manor and a group of people rushed out from the main gate. The people on the horses were all dressed in martial attire and held long swords and other weapons in their hands. Behind the horses were many gods in martial attire. At the same time, from the other 2 corners of the square, 2 groups of people also rushed out. The people on the horses were all dressed in iron armor and held long spears in their hands. The people below the horses were all armed with bows and arrows. They were actually soldiers from the government. These 3 groups of people moved quickly. Before the crowd could react, they had already surrounded the entire square. The soldiers with bows and arrows stood up straight in front. Their left hand held the bow and their right hand knocked an arrow. They pulled the bowstring back. The others drew their weapons and stood behind the soldiers, quietly waiting for the next order. Seeing this, the crowd in the square changed color. Although they were all people of the Jianghu and thought that they did not put the government soldiers in their eyes, they did not care about 1 against 2 or 1 against 5. However, now they had to face an organized and disciplined army. This was not something they could fight head-on. Moreover, this group of soldiers looked like the famous archers of Saro City. Under their arrow rain, even if one's lightness skill was superb, it was inevitable that one would be injured. In an instant, Some people who were ready to take advantage of the situation immediately quieted down and quietly put their swords back into their sheaths. At this time, Valley Master Nye came out from the crowd and stood at the edge of the arena. He smiled and shouted, "Heroes of the Jianghu, do not panic. These brothers are just a group of archers that I borrowed from Saro City's Lord Qian. Their purpose is to maintain the peace of the arena. They will not harm anyone. Everyone, stay where you are and do not panic." The first person below the stage immediately shouted, "Valley Master Nye, we have heard of your reputation and have come here to compete. You are treating us like this, and you are even borrowing the power of the government. Isn't this too dishonest?" Valley Master Nye smiled and said, "Brother, you misunderstand. My Rejuvenation Valley has always treated guests with courtesy. However, there are too many heroes here. To put it bluntly, it is inevitable that there are good and bad people mixed together. My Rejuvenation Valley's strength is limited and it is difficult to guarantee everyone's safety. That is why I had to ask the local officials for help. Of course, everyone can rest assured that those who sincerely came to the competition are all friends of my Rejuvenation Valley. My Rejuvenation Valley will guarantee the safety of our friends. Otherwise, think about it. Even if I have any disloyalty, will Rejuvenation Valley still have a foothold in the Jianghu?" That person laughed and said, "That is how it should be." I understand Valley Master Nye's explanation. I will sit here. You handle these miscellaneous matters. I am still waiting to drink a cup of your wedding wine. Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing on the arena, revealed a trace of a smile. This Valley Master Nye was indeed Nye Qianyu's father. Even the arrangement of the shills was so professional. When the others heard these words, their minds were set. That's right. We only came to the competition for a spouse. Since we were not chosen, we will just wait to drink the wedding wine. Anyway, this Nye family's third miss doesn't look like a peerless beauty. Moreover, she wants to marry into the family. Forget it, forget it. This matter has nothing to do with me. Let's sit down. Thus, many people sat down quietly. When the people in the corner saw this, they also shrunk their tails and no longer made a sound. Seeing that the situation in the arena was easily under his control, Valley Master Nye walked to the front of the corpse of the person who had just been shot to death by the hidden weapon. He frowned and looked at it. Then he said, "Everyone, this person on the arena, who knows which side this hero belongs to?" Below the arena, everyone looked at each other and didn't answer. Valley Master Nye shouted at the place where there was some commotion just now, "Does no one really know?" Still, no one answered. Valley Master Nye laughed in his heart, as expected by little Yu. Then, he pointed to the corpse on the ground and shouted, "What about the person on the ground? Is it because no one recognizes him?" Sure enough, no one answered. Valley Master Nye frowned and said, What should we do?" Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, he said to the two people who had just been knocked off the arena by Zhang Xiaohua, "These two heroes, the two of them went up the arena with you. Moreover, you seem to be very familiar with each other. You even practiced a combination attack. Could it be that you don't recognize it?" The person who had just been knocked off the arena looked at the people around him. Then he stepped out of the crowd and cupped his hands. "Valley Master Nye, I am Jin Tong of the Money Faction. I was qualified more than a month ago." Then he pointed to the person next to him and said, "This is my sworn brother Tao Guan. He was also qualified after me. After the two of us were qualified, these two people on the arena found us and said that they wanted to team up with us for the final competition. After everyone else was kicked off the arena, the four of us would use our own skills to determine the final champion. The two of us didn't want to agree, but these two people took out a combination attack that could be used by four people. When we saw it, we deeply felt the power of it. If the two of us didn't participate and he found another two people, we definitely wouldn't be his opponent. Therefore we could only cooperate. Valley Master Nye, the two of us only saw them when we were practicing together. Usually, we don't know where they went. Even when we asked, they kept quiet. Therefore until now, we only know that one of them is called Zhang San and the other is called Li Si. So it's like this." Valley Master Nye cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks to Nephew Jean of the Money Faction. Please forgive the misunderstanding just now. However, since Nephew Jean already knew that there was something wrong with these two people, he should have informed Rejuvenation Valley earlier. Don't you think so? Jean Tong's face was full of shame as he said. Valley Master Nye's words are very reasonable. This little nephew only admires Miss Nye wholeheartedly, and is afraid of losing this precious qualification. Therefore, I was momentarily blinded by greed. I am truly ashamed to face Rejuvenation Valley. Then, he looked around at the crowd and bowed deeply towards the stage. He said in a clear voice, Valley Master Nye, this little nephew was momentarily ignorant and caused the current situation. I am deeply uneasy. Fortunately, there was this Ren Xiaoxia who turned the tide and stopped the scoundrel scheme. Otherwise, this one would feel guilty for the rest of his life. This one originally wanted to stay and celebrate with Valley Master Nye, but I truly feel guilty in my heart. This little nephew will leave first and return to report to my father. I will explain all the mistakes here one by one. When there is an opportunity, I will ask my father to personally bring this one to apologize to Valley Master Nye. Heh. You feel guilty in your heart. It can't be that you have a guilty conscience, right? Zhang Xiaohua only sneered in her heart. Valley Master Nye smiled and said, Nephew Jean doesn't need to feel guilty. Which young person doesn't make mistakes? You should stay and drink a cup of wedding wine. Everything is fine. Jean Tong refused to comply no matter what. Valley Master Nye could only nod towards the surrounding soldiers. The surrounding soldiers opened up a small gap and were still on guard. Jean Tong and the others cupped their hands in salute to Valley Master Nye and led the dozen or so people away. Nye Qianrong was a little puzzled. She whispered to Nye Qianyu, Little sister, you let them go just like that? They may be the bad guys who tried to kill you. Nye Qianyu reached out and held her elder sister's hand. She smiled slightly and didn't say much. Valley Master Nye quietly looked at the side of the arena. If there was no one looking at him, immediately, there was someone who quietly used his lightness skill and returned to the villa. Valley Master Nye then looked at the area below the arena where there had been some commotion just now. Valley Master Nye said, Brothers of the Jianghu, the Rejuvenation Valley's martial arts competition for a spouse has been held here for more than 2 months. We are indebted to everyone for your support. Although there were some mistakes just now, Old Man, you had already explained the rules of the arena before the final competition. I believe that everyone already knew that the martial arts competition for a spouse is a joyous occasion, and is strictly prohibited from using poison. However, the 2 people just now actually disregarded the rules of my Rejuvenation Valley and angered the crowd. Everyone, think about it, if you were to be poisoned on this arena, how would my Rejuvenation Valley explain it to your parents and factions? Fortunately, this Ren Xiaoxia's martial arts had been exhausted and let these 2 reap what they sowed. Therefore, I declare that the final result of the competition is valid. The final winner is this Ren Xiaoyao and Ren Xiaoxia. Valley Master Nye's last sentence was very popular. Yes, in this arena, if I were to be poisoned, my life would have ended here. I didn't even touch the beautiful lady's hand and I would have died in vain. These 2 people are really hateful. It's good that they died. It's wonderful that they died. Therefore, the emotions of the crowd were stirred up and they shouted loudly. Good, well said. Ren Xiaoxia's martial arts are superior and he should have won. Valley Master Nye was delighted when he heard this. Even Nye Qianyu behind him was so embarrassed that her face turned red. Although she knew that this was fake, she still felt embarrassed. She gently pulled her elder sister and quietly slipped away from the back of the arena. Nye Qianxiu glanced at her husband. Both of their eyes were gloomy. Sighing, Nye Qianxiu also followed the 2 of them back to the villa. Valley Master Nye waited for the crowd to finish speaking before he waved his hands and said, Everyone, please listen to me. Rejuvenation Valley has already prepared a banquet and was only waiting for the winner to be decided. Once the winner was decided, he would have to bow to heaven and earth and marry my daughter. However, because these 2 scoundrels used poison, Ren Xiaoxia had no choice but to protect himself and hurt the 2 people. Blood has already been spilled today and it is very inauspicious. The wedding can only be postponed. However, this banquet is already prepared. Come, everyone, Rejuvenation Valley has prepared good wine and delicious food. Let's get drunk today. Chapter 439. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she laughed inwardly. That's right. I was just thinking about how to decline, But these two people found the most wonderful excuse for themselves. The people below the arena didn't care whether they were going through the ceremony or not. They weren't the ones doing the ceremony. Wasn't this one of the 4 great sorrows of life, others on the wedding night? Therefore they all called out, "All right, Valley Master Nye. We'll definitely disturb your rejuvenation valley tonight. Make sure to provide us with enough 100 flowers wine. We won't rest until we're drunk." When Valley Master Nye heard this, he cupped his hands and agreed. At this time, the 2 handsome men who had been sitting next to Nye Qianyu and the others stepped forward and bowed to Zhang Xiaohua. As expected, they were the 2 burdens, Chang Sheng and Yu Zhonglin. Yu Zhonglin smiled and said, "Ren Xiaoxia, oh, I should call you little brother-in-law. I am Yu Zhonglin of the Deer Cry sect. My wife is Nye Qianrong, little Yu's elder sister." He then pointed at Chang Sheng and said, "This is your second brother-in-law, Chang Sheng of the Whale Gang." Zhang Xiaohua rubbed herself and said with a wry smile, "Are the 2 of you starting to claim kinship now?" Yu Zhonglin said, "Of course. No matter what, since you've won the arena, you're our little brother-in-law. As for what happens in the future, we'll talk about it later." Hearing Yu Zhonglin's words, Zhang Xiaohua could only helplessly shrug and say, "Do whatever you want. However, I won't call you anything." Chang Sheng nodded and said, "Let's not talk so much. Ren Xiaoxia, let's go to the manor first." Zhang Xiaohua agreed. "That's exactly what I wanted." She then jumped down from the arena and walked towards the sword. Yu Zhonglin smiled and said, "You're too polite. Little brother-in-law, I'll just have my subordinates help you." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand. Sure enough, a man came out from beside the sword and reached out to pull the sword from the ground. Unfortunately, he first used 1 hand, then 2 hands, but the sword didn't even budge. The man's face was flushed red, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Zhang Xiaohua walked up to him and pulled out her sword. She smiled and said, "My sword recognizes people. No one else is allowed to pull it out." The man rubbed his hands and chuckled. His eyes were filled with admiration. When Yu Zhonglin and Chang Sheng walked over, just as the 3 of them were about to enter the manor, someone called out from behind, "Ren Xiaoxia, please wait a moment." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and looked back. It was a young man she didn't know. The young man approached and said awkwardly, "Ren Xiaoxia, there's something I need your help with." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "What is it? Do you really need my help?" The young man cupped his hands and said, "Just now on the arena, didn't 2 of my martial brothers have their acupoints sealed by Hero Ren? You've been competing with others on the arena. My martial brothers tried to unseal their acupoints but failed. They know you're busy and have already sent people to the arena to ask Senior Yu for help. However, I thought, whoever started the trouble should end it. So, I boldly came here to ask Ren Xiaoxia to unseal my martial brother's acupoints." Ayo! Zhang Xiaohua slapped his forehead. That's right, he had just casually sealed the 2's acupuncture points. He really forgot about it. He quickly said, "Sorry, it was this one's negligence. What I used just now was... Sigh, this one will help your junior brother release his acupuncture points." Of course, her enchanting finger was based on immortal Zhenqi. It couldn't be unsealed by martial arts' internal energy. If she didn't do it, wouldn't their acupoints never be unsealed? If too much time passed, their internal energy would be obstructed and their cultivation would be affected. That young man was overjoyed and said, "Please, Ren Xiaoxia, come with me." Chang Sheng was a little unhappy and said, "Brother, didn't you just say that you've already asked Senior Yu? He's an acupoint sealing expert. Since he's already gone, is there still a need for Ren Xiaoxia to go? Besides, isn't it inappropriate for Ren Xiaoxia to go now?" That young man was a little hesitant. What Chang Sheng said was reasonable. Since his martial brothers had already asked Senior Yu, if he asked Zhang Xiaohua to go, wouldn't it mean that he didn't trust Senior Yu? Didn't believe that Senior Yu could unseal their acupoints? What if Senior Yu misunderstood and left in a huff? The more he thought about it, the more the young man felt that his action was superfluous, or even superfluous. Zhang Xiaohua was just about to speak when Yu Zhonglin smiled and said, "Second brother-in-law, your words are inappropriate. This young man's thoughts are meticulous and thorough. He's very good. Besides, My father has always supported the younger generation. He won't be angry because of such a small misunderstanding. Little brother, you don't have to take it to heart. When the young man heard this, his expression eased a little. Zhang Xiaohua then knew that this Senior Yu was Valley Master Nie's relative by marriage. Otherwise, why would he replace Valley Master Nie to host the arena? Yu Zhonglin smiled and said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Little brother-in-law, my father has already gone. Do you want to go? Or do you want to go back directly to the village?" Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation, "Brother Yu, this matter is still because of me. Even if Senior Yu has already gone, I should go and apologize to him. It's not my fault that I sealed his acupoints on the arena, but I didn't think of unsealing his acupoints. It's my fault." Yu Zhonglin gave a thumbs up and said, "Little brother-in-law is indeed talented. With such breadth of mind, you're a good match for little Yu." Zhang Xiaohua cursed in her heart, "Big brother-in-law, can't you stop calling me little brother-in-law? If there weren't people here, I wouldn't have given you any face. How can I call him big brother-in-law? Didn't I just recognize him first? Hey!" Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but spit. When Yu Zhonglin saw this, he smiled again and said, "Little brother-in-law's posture is good. It's exactly the same as little Yu's." Zhang Xiaohua was speechless and looked at the young man. The young man knew that Zhang Xiaohua was going and it was too late to stop her. He could only smile bitterly and said, "Then I'll have to ask Ren Xiaoxia to come down with me." He prayed in his heart, "But I hope Senior Yu won't mind." Zhang Xiaohua had a good impression of Yu Zhonglin. She didn't want her father to lose face and urged the young man to hurry up. Unfortunately, the young man didn't know Zhang Xiaohua's thoughts and just walked slowly. He wanted Senior Yu to arrive earlier so that when he returned, it would be best if Senior Yu's acupoints were already unsealed and Senior Yu had already left. But the space in front of the manor was only so big. How much time could he waste? On the other side, Senior Yu also seemed to be delayed by something. When Zhang Xiaohua arrived, Senior Yu had just arrived. Seeing a group of people anxiously surrounding the two young men lying quietly on the ground, Senior Yu was about to step forward to unseal their acupoints. Zhang Xiaohua quickly shouted, "Senior Yu." When Senior Yu heard the call, he looked up and said with a smile, "So it's the bridegroom. Hee, you don't have to call me Senior Yu in the future. Just call me Uncle." When the young man who led Zhang Xiaohua here saw that Senior Yu didn't mind, he felt relieved. However, Zhang Xiaohua felt awkward. If Senior Yu was a senior, calling him uncle was nothing. But looking at the smile in Senior Yu's eyes and Yu Zhonglin's little brother-in-law, Zhang Xiaohua really didn't have the mood to call him that. Senior Yu seemed to know something. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't answer, he smiled and said, "This child is really thin-skinned. It's fine if you don't call me that. Wait a few days until you get used to it. However, in this Jianghu, it's still good to be thick-skinned. You have to pay more attention in the future." Seeing Senior Yu's earnest teaching, Zhang Xiaohua could only cup her hands and say, "Thank you Senior Yu for your teachings." The people on the side all laughed. This young man is really shy. Even the word senior is omitted, but she still doesn't call him uncle. Zhang Xiaohua ignored the crowd and said, "These two brothers' acupoints were sealed by me on the stage. But just now, I was careless and forgot. I apologize to everyone first." After speaking, she bowed deeply to the people next to her. The two Marshall brothers also hurriedly returned the bow and said, "It's fine. I know the bridegroom is busy." Zhang Xiaohua then said to Senior Yu, "Senior Yu, please stand to the side. These things were all caused by this junior. It's better to let this junior do it." Senior Yu smiled and said, "It's fine. I'm already here. How about this? I'll also do my part. Consider it a meeting gift for you. In a while, don't make me take out anything." Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. "I didn't ask you for a meeting gift. Why is this Senior Yu even stingier than me?" Seeing this, Senior Yu pointed to the person next to him and said, "I'll solve this one. You go and solve the other one." Zhang Xiaohua was very anxious and said, "Senior Yu, let me solve it." As she spoke, she was about to go up. Senior Yu laughed and said, "You silly boy, you really think I didn't prepare a meeting gift for you? Don't worry, good nephew. When we return to the villa, I'll definitely make you satisfied." As he spoke, He put his finger on the wrist of the person on the ground to check the meridians. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes. Well, I'm really greedy for your meeting gift. You can slowly solve it. Thinking about this, she walked to the side of the other person. This acupoint was sealed by herself. Of course, she knew where it was. She didn't need to use Zhenqi to check it. She just followed the enchanting finger. With a few pokes, the Zhenqi penetrated into the meridians and immediately unsealed the acupoint. That person opened his eyes, looked around, stood up, cupped his hands and said, Ren Xiaoxia's martial arts are excellent. I admire you. Zhang Xiaohua also apologized again and again. At this time, she looked at Senior Yu again. He had already checked the few acupoints that were sealed and used several common unsealing techniques, but none of them worked. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had already unsealed the other person's acupoints, he couldn't help but feel anxious. The people of Jianghu paid attention to face. Just now, he came over to unseal the other person's acupoints because he gave face to Valley Head Nye and stood up for Zhang Xiaohua. However, if he couldn't unseal the acupoints, then he would lose face. Losing face wasn't a big deal. The people of Jianghu said that one day, a young man sealed an acupoint. Senior Yu Yan didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and wanted to unseal the acupoints. Unfortunately, his martial arts weren't good enough and he couldn't unseal it. At this time, Senior Yu finally understood why the other person kept stopping him from unsealing the acupoints. Alas, it was too late to regret. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.Qidian. Chapter 440. Zhang Xiaohua had expected that Elder Yu couldn't unseal his acupoints. At this time, seeing the panic in Elder Yu's eyes, Zhang Xiaohua also felt very apologetic. Zhang Xiaohua walked over and said with a smile, Elder Yu, are you still worried about your greeting gift? Don't worry, no matter what kind of greeting gift you give me, I will like it. Then he said to the people next to him, Don't you think so? The people next to him also smiled and said, It should be like this. We don't dare to refuse an elder's gift. No matter what it is, we should accept it. At this time, taking advantage of everyone's laughter, Zhang Xiaohua's foot lightly tapped the shoulder of the person on the ground, and a strand of true qi entered his meridians. At this time, everyone was smiling and nodding. How could they notice Zhang Xiaohua's small movements? However, Elder Yu was squatting down to look at Zhang Xiaohua. He just happened to see the movement of Zhang Xiaohua's foot from the corner of his eye. His heart moved, and he also smiled. This child, how could I care about a greeting gift? I just wanted to see how your acupoint sealing technique is, so I delayed it. Watch me. After speaking, he immediately changed to a rarely seen acupoint sealing technique. Only this time, he didn't put any internal energy into the meridians. Sure enough, as Elder Yu's finger left, the person on the ground also opened his eyes. He looked left and right, and then stood up. Zhang Xiaohua naturally went forward to apologize. Zhang Xiaohua's repeated apologies really caused the people around to have a good impression of her. They all said, Ren Xiaoxia is really broad-minded. For a small matter of delaying the unsealing of acupoints, he repeatedly apologized. I don't know what good karma this Valley Master Nye accumulated in his previous life to actually pick such a good son-in-law. Fine, Zhang Xiaohua secretly said. He's spoiled. Elder Yu said from the side. Everyone, Valley Master Nye has already prepared food and wine in the villa. Everyone, quickly pack up and go to the villa to taste the famous 100-flower wine. I will go with the groom first. With that said, Elder Yu and Zhang Xiaohua cupped their fists and left, followed by Yu Zhonglin and Chang Sheng. Elder Yu and Zhang Xiaohua's group of 4 entered the villa. At this time, the sun was already setting in the west, and the sky was about to darken. Elder Yu said to Yu Zhonglin and Chang Sheng, You two go to the front hall. There are many guests today. Don't make any mistakes. It's been hard on you for the past 2 months. After tonight, it will be over. The two received their orders and left. Elder Yu smiled and said, Bridegroom, let's go. Your father-in-law is waiting for you in front. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua frown, Elder Yu's smile deepened. After walking for a while, seeing that there was no one around, Elder Yu whispered, Nephew, there's no one here, so I won't call you bridegroom. Hee, can you? After hesitating for a moment he said, can you tell me what technique you use to seal my acupoints? Yu Yen and Yu Zhonglin belonged to a sect called Deer Cry sect. Everyone had a strange anta-like weapon, which was used to seal more than 300 acupoints on a person's body. Therefore, Yu Yen was very proficient in the study of meridians and acupoints. Sealing acupoints and unsealing acupoints were also very famous in Jianghu. This was also the main reason why he was invited over. But just now, the acupoints that Zhang Xiaohua sealed were very ordinary. There was nothing special about it compared to others. But Yu Yen just couldn't unseal it. If it weren't for Zhang Xiaohua's timely and covert action, he would have fallen today. Elder Yu had studied acupoints all his life. Now that he saw an acupoint sealing technique that he couldn't unseal, how could he hold back? Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, this enchanting finger is the secret technique of the Righteous Alliance. If I say the name, Elder Yu will definitely know the origin of the technique. But if I don't say it, or make up a name, it will be disrespectful to Elder Yu. Alas, why did Elder Yu ask this kind of question? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant, Elder Yu was also embarrassed. That's right, each sect had their own secret techniques, which were never divulged to outsiders. Although his question didn't involve any secrets, it was still suspicious of probing into other people's secrets. But if he didn't get to the bottom of it, how could he be at ease? Elder Yu could only laugh at himself and said, nephew, please don't blame me. This old man has been immersed in the meridians and acupoints all my life. Seeing nephew's technique, my heart itched and I couldn't control myself. You just need to tell me the name of the technique. Zhang Xiaohua laughed inwardly. This technique is only a martial arts technique. I only took it as a reference. Now that I've learned it, it's useless for me. Even if I give it to you, it's not impossible. But even if I give it to you, do you dare to take it? After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Elder Yu, I still can't tell you this technique. But have you heard of the Righteous Alliance's Enchanting Finger? Enchanting Finger? Elder Yu was very confused. No matter how hard he racked his brain, he still couldn't remember. But he still smiled and said, I've heard of it. It seems to be one of the Righteous Alliance's secret techniques. And it's good that you know. My technique is quite similar to the Righteous Alliance's Enchanting Finger. Oh, then this old man understands. Elder Yu's face had a look of sudden realization, but he muttered in his heart, when did the Righteous Alliance have this kind of technique? I've heard of the Heaven and Earth Palm. Later, I'll have to find someone to inquire about what this Enchanting Finger is. Elder Yu lowered his head and pondered about which channel to use to inquire about the Enchanting Finger. Following his guidance, they turned a few hills and came face to face with a fiery red peach forest. Elder Yu raised his head and pointed at the peach forest, saying with a smile, Little Yu has liked peach blossoms since she was young. These peach trees were all personally planted by Little Yu. Looking at this large peach forest, Zhang Xiaohua came to a realization. No wonder little fish Nie insisted on going in to admire the peach forest when she saw it. She even wanted to compete in drinking. So it's like this at home. Tisk. This rich family is really different. A girl's hobby is enough to open up such a large piece of land for her to plant peach blossoms. If I plant peach trees all over the southern slope of the Guozhuang house, it would be strange if Daddy didn't spank my butt to pieces. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, Elder Yu, there are several hundred peach trees in this peach forest. Could it be that they were all personally planted by little Miss Nie? Is it an image project that her family planted on her behalf? Elder Yu shook his head and said, Virtuous nephew still doesn't understand little Yu. With her extremely stubborn personality, how could she do this kind of face-saving work? Speaking of which, it's quite pitiful. Little Yu's mother's name had the word peach in it, and she also liked peach blossoms very much. Before Little Yu's mother died, she accompanied Little Yu to plant a peach tree, saying that it was her substitute. If Little Yu had any worries, she could talk to the peach tree. This was originally a way to comfort a child. However, later on, Little Yu missed her mother very much and was afraid that her mother would be as lonely as she was, so she planted other peach trees next to that peach tree. In order to show her respect for her mother, Little Yu forbade others from helping her. Every tree was planted by her own hands and had to be planted every year. After so many years, it became a peach forest. What a cute and strong child, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. That's right. That's why, when you have the opportunity, you have to properly cherish it. Elder Yu also sighed. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his nose and didn't say anything else. After turning around the peach forest, there was an exquisite pavilion and small courtyard. The plaque in front of the courtyard had 3 very delicate and beautiful words written on it. Peach Blossom Nunnery. The handwriting was very familiar. It was written by Nie Qianyu herself. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, "Where is this?" Elder Yu said with a smile, "This is little Yu's embroidery house." Oh, Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly and said, "The word nunnery seems to be used incorrectly. How can a girl's embroidery house use this word?" Elder Yu also shook his head. "I heard from her eldest sister that little Yu liked the poem Peach Blossom Immortal in the Peach Blossom Nunnery very much, so she changed the name of her residence to this." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "This little fish Nie actually thinks of herself as the Peach Blossom Immortal. How interesting." He had been calling Nie Qianyu Miss Nie since he entered the manor, but now he was laughing, he had forgotten. Hearing little fish Nie's words, Elder Yu was delighted. At this moment, a clear and crisp sound rang out from inside. "Big Brother Ren, why are you laughing?" A girl in a light yellow dress turned around the courtyard door lightly and asked with a smile. It was Nie Qianyu, who had changed into new clothes. Nie Qianyu had a delicate face and a short figure, just like a 12 or 13-year-old. At this moment, she was wearing a light yellow dress and her hair was combed into a high ponytail. Under the dim sky, she looked like a dream from a nameless fairy a few years ago. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned at that moment and stared at Nie Qianyu. Nie Qianyu was originally shy. Although Zhang Xiaohua had made it clear before going to the arena that he was just helping Nie Qianyu block the front and didn't have any other thoughts. He was now Nie Qianyu's fiancé after all. How could Nie Qianyu not be shy? Not to mention that Zhang Xiaohua was facing her directly like a pig. Nie Qianyu's face was as beautiful as the peach blossoms in the peach forest. With the light yellow color, she was really a peach blossom immortal. Nie Qianyu's voice was as low as a mosquito's. "Big Brother Ren, Big Brother Ren." Zhang Xiaohua came to his senses from the shock. He wiped away the saliva that he didn't know was flowing out, rolled his eyes, and said with a smile, "Miss Nie, I really can't see what?" But he couldn't think of the following words anymore. If he said, "I really can't see your beauty," Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't care about Nie Qianyu spitting if Elder Yuelao wasn't here. If Elder Yuelao was here, he would be abnormally frivolous. Nie Qianyu seemed to understand Zhang Xiaohua's meaning. She pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Big Brother Ren, you must be joking. I just like that line very much. I don't dare to call myself a peach blossom immortal." Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Miss Nie, you are dignified and intelligent. If you call yourself a peach blossom immortal, I would raise my hands and feet to agree." As expected, Nie Qianyu spat softly ba and said, "Loquacious." Then she said to Elder Yuelao, who was standing a little further away and looking at the peach blossoms in the distance, "Uncle Yuelao, father is waiting in the hall. Please bring Big Brother Ran and follow me." Elder Yuelao acted as if he had just woken up from a dream and said, "Little Yu, your peach tree is excellent. It's just that the pair of magpies on the tree are always noisy. They have to be disciplined." Nie Qianyu and Zhang Xiaohua both blushed. Chapter 441. In a similarly exquisite small hall, Valley Master Nie had changed into new clothes and was waiting there with a smile on his face. Seeing Nie Qianyu come in with Elder Yu and Zhang Xiaohua, he came up to greet them. He first raised his hands in salute to Elder Yu. "Elder Brother Yu, we have troubled you during this time, thank you very much." Elder Yu returned the greeting. "You and I have been brothers for many years and have been in-laws for many years. Why be so courteous? Today, it was thanks to Ren Xiaoxia that we were able to get through this difficult situation. You still have to thank Ren Xiaoxia." Valley Master Nie also nodded and turned to bow deeply to Zhang Xiaohua. "I also have to thank Ren Xiaoxia for his righteousness. If it wasn't for Ren Xiaoxia's help today, my daughter." Valley Master Nie's expression was that he couldn't bear to look back. Zhang Xiaohua hastily returned the greeting. Fortunately, I didn't fail you. Fortunately, I didn't fail you. Afterwards, the three sat down as host and guest. Nye Qianyu personally poured tea for the three. Taking a sip of tea, Elder Yu said with lingering fear, "Old man Nye, look at the wicked idea you came up with. You almost led a wolf into the house. Think of the 4 people that fought with Ren Xiaoxia in the end. They were clearly in the same group and may even be our enemies." Valley Master Nye nodded. Elder Brother Yu's reproach is very correct. I was only worried about little Yu's safety that day. It was truly thoughtless. If I had known that there was such a flower protector like Ren Xiaoxia, I wouldn't have thought of such a wicked idea even if you beat me to death. He then looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "There's no need to say for sure that those 4 must be Rejuvenation Valley's enemies. Their martial arts are strong and they know how to attack together. If it wasn't for the enemy's strength, I really can't think of anyone in the Jianghu who would be so generous. It's a pity that we couldn't take them down on the spot." Elder Yu was a bit unwilling, otherwise, we could have asked who was going against us. Sigh, it's not like the 4 of them are the only ones who have formed a team. The others also have brains. They know the principle of forming a team first and then fighting amongst themselves. We don't have a good reason to attack. The others formed a team at the last minute, but they had planned this beforehand. It was precisely because of this trick that we were unable to do anything. Brother Nye, you've already sent people to follow them, right? Hopefully we can follow the vine to the melon. Nye Qianyu interrupted, "Father and Uncle Yu, don't have too much hope. It's good enough that our people can come back alive." Valley Master Nye also stroked his beard and said, "Little Yu's worries are reasonable. I also told them to be careful and not force it. If there is any movement, there is no need to take the risk." Nye Qianyu sighed and said, "This is the difference in strength. Even if you see the clues, you don't dare to casually cut them off." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly said, "Actually, the opponent didn't send 4 people." Everyone was surprised. "How did you know? How many people are there?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "If I'm not wrong, there should be 5 people." Nye Qianyu's eyes lit up and said, "Brother Ren, tell us the reason." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I've learned the combination attack that they practiced before. It should be 5 people attacking together to achieve the best effect. But now there are only 4 people participating. It's not like they can't send 5 people, so," without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to finish, the other 3 people said in unison, "So one person was eliminated and didn't get the final qualification." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "The 3 of you are very smart, amazing." Bah! Nye Qianyu almost spat out again, but she didn't dare to spit out when she saw her father's expression. Yu Lao said without hesitation, "But why didn't they send another person to participate in the arena competition? If one person isn't enough, they can find another person." Nye Qianyu smiled and said, "Uncle Yu, there are only 2 possibilities. First, this combination attack is very difficult to practice. 5 people need to practice for a long time to be proficient, so it is difficult to find such a person in such a short time. Second, after this person was eliminated, there was no time to find a second person." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Although this combination attack is difficult to practice, 2 months is not too short if you concentrate on practicing it. Moreover, if one group of 5 people is not enough, there can be 2 other groups of 5 people who can also be replaced. So there is only the second possibility." However, he then asked suspiciously, "That's right, Miss Nye. Why can't a second group of 5 appear?" Valley Head Nye smiled proudly and said, "Nephew's words are reasonable. However, if a second group of 5 really appears, then their first group of 5 is not the so-called temporary group. Instead, the second group of 5 will clearly tell everyone present that the 10 of us have long been premeditated. If they are so brazen, not only will they give our Rejuvenation Valley an excuse to break the engagement, they will also provoke our entire southern martial arts world." Yu Lao also laughed and said, "If it is really as Nephew Ren said, then they might as well directly send a large group of people to attack Rejuvenation Valley. What's the point of using so many small tricks?" Valley Head Nye waved his hand and said, "Nephew Ren also doesn't understand the strength of our Rejuvenation Valley and the significance of our Rejuvenation Valley to the martial arts world. That's why he has doubts." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "In that case, I have not considered it properly. Now that I think about it, the scope is much smaller. These 4 people are not well known, and their real martial arts may not be better than the others. They are probably not the main characters. If they become the champion... Zhang Xiaohua wanted to say something but stopped. Nie Qianyu nodded and said, if they become the champion, it will seem extremely unnatural and arouse the vigilance of our Rejuvenation Valley. Therefore, these people who have not obtained the qualifications are instead the main characters of the 5. The other 3 also nodded repeatedly. But who is this person? Zhang Xiaohua almost asked out loud. However, since they knew that this person's martial arts were extremely high and that he was someone who should have passed very easily but was eliminated, this person's name was obvious. Although Zhang Xiaohua did not personally witness the competition in these 2 months like Yu Lao and Valley Head Nie, just from today's competition, he already had a rough idea in his heart. Since even he knew who was the suspect, how could the others present not know? Her question seemed a bit idiotic. And it was better not to ask. Sure enough, the entire small hall was deathly silent. After a while, Yu Lao said, this series of conjectures is all based on Nephew Ren's theory of the 5 people's combined attack. Nephew Ren, are you sure it is the 5 of them? This question was asked very unconfidently. That was because this combined attack was broken by Zhang Xiaohua herself. Moreover, she broke it extremely easily and was not injured at all. If Zhang Xiaohua's words were false, Yu Lao himself would be the first to not believe it. However, this involved too many things, so Yu Lao had to ask on behalf of Valley Head Nie. Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, I can definitely answer. After thinking for a while he said, moreover, I also know of a 4-person combined attack. If they really had 4 people, then presumably they would have directly used a 4-person combined attack. Hearing this, Yu Lao couldn't help but ask curiously, Nephew Ren, where is your sect? How did you learn so much? This. Zhang Xiaohua was a bit hesitant. That's right, even with Yu Lao and Valley Head Nie's knowledge, they had never seen a 5-person combined attack. Not only was he familiar with it, he even knew the 4-person combined attack. This sect was definitely not ordinary. However, how should he answer? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua in a difficult position, Valley Head Nie smiled and said, if Nephew Ren is in a difficult position, then there's no need to say anything. The great sects of the Jianghu must also be very familiar with this combined attack. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to deny or affirm. He could only sip his tea without speaking. Valley Head Nie wasn't surprised when he didn't receive an answer. However, Yu Lao's eyes flickered, as if he thought of something. After a while, Elder Yu said in a low voice, from what this old man has seen in the past 2 months, Longting Sword Village is the most suspicious. It's just that Longting Sword Village's strength is not ordinary and is not much weaker than Rejuvenation Valley. They were actually ordered by our enemy. Our enemy's strength is... Then he shook his head slightly and said, could it be that Longting Sword Village is the mastermind behind this? Valley Head Nie shook his head slightly and said, Longting Sword Village can't be the mastermind. The methods and strength they used to fight us in these 2 months are not something that old Long can compare to. Nie Qianyu said, the people who attacked us don't seem to be people of the southern martial arts world. Longting Sword Village is their chess piece. She looked at her father and said, moreover, they don't dare to be so brazen. They must have some misgivings in their hearts. Therefore, as long as we Rejuvenation Valley are careful and cooperate with other forces, we may not be afraid of them. Valley Head Nie also nodded slightly and said, after the martial arts competition, Rejuvenation Valley won't have too many things to do. They won't have too many opportunities and will probably lay low for a while. We can send more people to keep an eye on Longting Sword Village. If we catch them unaware, we will definitely gain something. Nie Qianyu smiled. Only the 4 of us in this hall know about this. Don't tell anyone else. Only then will it be effective. Valley Head Nie and Elder Yu both smiled and said, that's how it should be. However, Zhang Xiaohua said, tomorrow, I will leave for the north. This matter will definitely rot in my stomach. Please rest assured. Hearing these words, Nie Qianyu's originally excited expression immediately dimmed. She looked faintly at Zhang Xiaohua and didn't say anything. Valley Head Nie smiled and said, Ren Xiaoxia, if there isn't anything too important, I hope you can still stay in Rejuvenation Valley for a few more days. Let us do our part as hosts and express Rejuvenation Valley's gratitude. Elder Yu also smiled and said, "That's right. Nephew is now the bridegroom. Although there is no need to get married today, how do you want us to answer when people ask in a few days?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Isn't this a small matter? With Miss Nie's intelligence, how could you not think of such a simple reason?" After saying this, she quietly looked at Nie Qianyu. Nie Qianyu smiled bitterly and said, "Big Brother Ran has acted righteously. Not only has he saved this girl's lifelong happiness, he has also saved Rejuvenation Valley's foundation. Rejuvenation Valley can't thank him enough. How could we go back on our words?" Then she said to Valley Head Nie, "Father, you only need to tell the outside world that Big Brother Ran is still young and that he will get married in a few years." Chapter 442. Valley Master Nie was speechless. Yes, this was such a perfect reason. Zhang Xiaohua looked like he was only 14 or 15 years old. When he first entered the arena, others said that his hair was not even fully grown. For this reason, Valley Master Nie was specially invited to the arena to assess his qualifications. Using his age as an excuse was perfect. Sigh, sometimes being too smart is not a good thing. Valley Master Nie sighed inwardly. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he also nodded inwardly and said, "Miss Nie is indeed amazing. You can think of such a reason so casually." Nie Qianyu said sarcastically, "Ren Xiaoxia only wants to leave. Only I can think of such a job." No matter what, Nie Qianyu could not say those two words out loud. Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands in thanks and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Miss Nie." Then, he said to Valley Master Nie and Elder Yu, "Then I will take my leave early tomorrow morning. I am also tired from the day and will not be able to attend tonight's social gathering. Please forgive me." This. Valley Master Nie and Elder Yu were a little hesitant. The main character of tonight's banquet was this fellow. If he wanted to leave now, how would he explain it to others? However, it seemed that Zhang Xiaohua did not even want to deal with it half-heartedly. This young man's martial arts were superb and Rejuvenation Valley was indebted to him. They could not force him. Valley Master Nie was about to persuade less when he heard Nie Qianyu say sadly, "Big Brother Ren, forgive me for being nosy. Actually, I should not have asked, but I feel that you will be back in Tanha City for a long time. It will be fine for you to stay in Rejuvenation Valley for a few more days. Can you tell me why you are going to Tanha City?" Nie Qianyu was also anxious. Of course, when they were in Pingyang City, she did not even ask about Zhang Xiaohua's whereabouts. But now, he had to say it so bluntly. However, she felt that it was inappropriate to say this and hurriedly explained, "Big Brother Ren, if it's about the sex affairs, please don't say anything." Alas, Nie Qianyu was really smart. Zhang Xiaohua had already revealed that it had something to do with the comfort of her family. It was probably Zhang Xiaohua's personal affair. Nie Qianyu asked this question for two reasons. First, she left herself a way out. Second, she wanted to interrogate Zhang Xiaohua. When Valley Master Nie heard this, he rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Nephew Ren, Rejuvenation Valley naturally doesn't dare to interfere with your sex affairs. However, if it's your own private affairs, why don't you tell us? Perhaps Rejuvenation Valley can be of help?" Elder Yu also followed up and said, "Yes, nephew. Our dear Cry sect will also do our best to help. Big Brother Ran, Rejuvenation Valley's position in the southern martial arts world is somewhat special. We have frequent contact with various sects and have a little reputation in the entire Jianghu. If there's anything you need from Rejuvenation Valley, please don't hesitate to enlighten us." Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved. She knew very little about the Jianghu and it was not easy to find out the exact location of the incense sect. Chu Yunfei of the Misty School only said that he would ask First Elder Hu when he returned and said that he would definitely be able to find out. Moreover, the Misty School was closely watched by the Righteous Alliance and other sections. Even if Chu Yunfei obtained the information, it was hard to say whether he would be able to send the information to Songning Town. She had rushed all the way to Songning Town and did not obtain any information. She might as well directly ask Valley Master Nie and Elder Yu. No matter what, the two of them were the masters of a valley and a sect. They would definitely have more information. However, if she asked this, would it arouse their suspicions? However, what could they possibly suspect? She was just asking about the location of the incense sect. After thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, "Since the two uncles are willing to help, I will ask directly. If there's anything inconvenient for you to say, then just pretend that I didn't ask." Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was so serious, Valley Master Nye and Elder Yu's expressions turned cold. "Nephew, please tell us first." "Okay, uncles," Zhang Xiaohua said softly. "I want to know the location of the incense sect? Or the approximate location?" This. After hearing this question, the two of them had strange expressions on their faces. Even Nye Qianyu had a strange expression on her face. Just as Nye Qianyu was about to speak, Valley Master Nye gave her a meaningful glance. Valley Master Nye frowned. "Nephew, why are you inquiring about the incense sect for no reason? I remember you said that the information you want to inquire about is related to the lives of your relatives. This incense sect?" Zhang Xiaohua regretted making the matter too serious. However, even though she did not have much contact with Valley Master Nye and Elder Yu, but from Nye Qianyu's upbringing, she could tell that they were not sinister people. She only kept the most important information to herself and was not afraid to tell them the rest. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua said worriedly, "This matter is a long story, but I don't know how this matter will affect Rejuvenation Valley and Deer Cry sect. If it's not appropriate, I ask the two uncles to keep it a secret." The two of them nodded. Nye Qianyu also smiled. "Brother Ren is treating us as outsiders. Just say it. Uncle Yu also watched me grow up. When I was young, I even pulled out Uncle Yu's beard. I don't have to worry about his temperament. You also don't have to worry." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. "I have a brother who entered the Misty School 5 years ago." Before Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, Nye Qianyu shouted, "Brother Ren, I understand. You went to Pingyang City to find your brother. Did you only know that the Misty School was destroyed by the Incense Sect, the Dalan Temple and the Righteous Alliance when you arrived at Pingyang City? You only thought of going to the Incense Sect to find your brother?" Nye Qianyu's series of questions saved Zhang Xiaohua the trouble of explaining. He smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Nye, you're really smart." "That's right. I'm worried about my brother's safety and want to find out more about him. That's why I'm leaving tomorrow." Nye Qianyu asked again, "But, Brother Ren, why do you have to go to Tanha City to inquire about information? Could it be that your sect is there?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Miss Nye, please understand that I can't reveal anything about my sect." Hearing this, Nye Qianyu looked at Valley Master Nye, then stood up and walked to Zhang Xiaohua. She bowed deeply for the first time and said, "Brother Ren, I apologize to you here. At the same time, I also want to thank you. Previously, I misunderstood that you were unwilling to send us back to Sarala City. I didn't expect you to have such a big matter in your heart. I feel guilty." Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly stood up and returned the greeting. "Little Nye, Fishy, don't be so polite. Your etiquette is so thorough that it makes me feel very awkward. Look, I have goosebumps all over my body." Nye Qianyu covered her mouth and snickered. This Miss Nye has finally changed to Little Fishy. Valley Master Nye and Elder Yu also looked at each other, feeling gratified in their hearts. This youth is truly a chivalrous person. He knew early on in Pingyang City that his brother's fate was uncertain, yet he was able to escort a little girl he had never met before. After leaving for more than a month, the ancient affectionate people would travel 1,000 miles to protect their sister-in-law. This youth is not lacking in the slightest. The most gratifying thing was that he didn't mention anything in return after escorting the girl home. He was worried about his brother and wanted to return to his sect as soon as possible to seek help. Yet, he was insatiable and asked him to save Rejuvenation Valley from calamity again. He didn't say anything and didn't mention anything in return before stepping onto the arena. This kind of warm-hearted person was indeed rare. Sigh, why can't this fake become real? Valley Master Nye sighed inwardly. He heard Nye Qianyu say with a light laugh, "Brother Ren, you are too cautious. If you could have revealed a bit in front of me, you wouldn't have been so worried." Zhang Xiaohua was startled and said, "Could it be?" On the side, Valley Master Nye also smiled and said, "Nephew Ren, let me ask you. You came to Tanha City to seek help from your sect. Do you want your sect to uphold justice for your brother?" Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved and he said with a wry smile, "Although it is my first time in Jianghu, I know that the cult of fragrance is a super large sect in Jianghu. It is not something my sect can shake. Moreover, why would my sect make such a big fuss over my personal matters? I only want to return to my sect and ask about the location of the cult of fragrance. I want to see if my brother has been brought back to the cult of fragrance. So it's like this. Elder Yu continued, I heard that several years ago, the Misty School was exterminated. Many disciples died as martyrs on that day. Among them, the female disciples and some low-level disciples were brought back to the cult of fragrance. Oh, there were also some disciples who were injured and had their internal strength destroyed. I don't know, yes, Uncle Yu, this is also the reason why I am anxious to return, Zhang Xiaohua sighed and said. My brother's martial arts is not good. I really don't know if he is alive or dead. Valley Master Nye smiled and said, Heaven helps the worthy. It has been several years. If he is still alive, he must be living well now. It is useless to be anxious. Zhang Xiaohua said, No matter what, it is better to know the news as soon as possible. Nye Qianyu said again, If it is that simple, I can tell you the location of the cult of fragrance. Brother Ren, actually, I could have told you in Pingyang City. Ah? Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat agitated. As the saying goes, wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search but find it without any effort. He never thought that such secret information in Jianghu would be known by this girl who had been with him for nearly 2 months. Sigh, if he had known earlier, he would have asked her. Valley Master Nye said from the side, Nephew Ren, it's fortunate that you've spoken out about the difficulties in your heart today. Otherwise, when you return to Tonha City and find out the location of the aroma cult, I think you'll be so angry that you'll vomit blood. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Then he frowned and said, based on what Uncle Nye said, could it be that the cult of fragrance is in Macho City? If it was really in Macho City, Zhang Xiaohua's journey from Rejuvenation Valley to Tonha City, and then from Tonha City back to Macho City was really a waste of time. Nye Qianyu smiled and said, Brother Ren, since you know that the cult of fragrance is not in the north, then there is no need to go to Tonha City. There is no harm in staying in Rejuvenation Valley for 1 or 2 more days. Elder Yu's face was even more cheerful. Yes, Nephew Ren, this is called if the man is not left, the sky will be left. Don't you think so? Chapter 443. That's right, from here to Tonha City, then from Tonha City back here, a round trip would take at least 3 to 4 months. I had nothing better to do, so I just wasted my time on the carriage. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Valley Master Nye said, in fact, this fragrance religion is not around Saro City, but towards the southwest. It's probably in a place called Kai Yun South. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and asked, Uncle Nye, the Jianghu people say that on the moon, what does that mean? Well, Valley Master Nye said with some hesitation, this is a little secret of entering and leaving the fragrance religion. I probably can't tell you. If there's a chance, you can go and see for yourself. So it's like this, Zhang Xiaohua said thoughtfully, if we go from here to the fragrance religion, how should we go? Nye Qianyu asked, Brother Ren, do you just want to know if your brother is alive or dead? Or do you have to see it with your own eyes to be at ease? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Of course I have to see it with my own eyes to be at ease. However, if I can get the news in advance, that's also the best. Valley Master Nye knew what his daughter meant. He frowned and said, Nephew Ren, you also understand what little you means. That is, our Rejuvenation Valley will ask the fragrance religion on your behalf if your brother is in the fragrance religion. However, we can help you pass on this message, but we can't guarantee that there will be a reply. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, Uncle Nye, what do you mean? Valley Master Nye looked at Elder Yu and said with a bitter smile, My Rejuvenation Valley is just a small sect in the southern martial arts world. We rely on our proficiency in medical skills and elixirs to have good relations with other sections. Even the fragrance religion has some relations with us. But after all, they are a super sect. The Rejuvenation Valley can only speak for the fragrance religion's Pill Expansion Hall. Although I have met the Pill Expansion Hall's Pill Expansion Hall a few times, he may not stand up for such a small matter. I also know a little about the Misty School. It seems that the mistress of the Misty School's Misty School has established her own hall in the incense cult, which is called the Misty Hall. This Misty Hall is quite ostracized in the incense cult. If it wasn't for the incense cult's leader protecting her disciple, the disciples of the Misty Hall would have a hard time. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, I understand. The others are all local disciples of the aroma cult, while the Misty Hall is just an outsider. It would be strange if they were not humiliated. It's inappropriate to ask Elder Sage for help. In addition, even if the other idol disciples can help, it won't be good for Rejuvenation Valley or your sect if they don't keep their mouths shut and cause the incense cult to misunderstand. So that's how it is. Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly and said, It seems that I should go there personally. Hearing this, Nie Qianyu laughed again and said, Big Brother Ren, you're underestimating the incense cult. Even if Father told you the exact location of the incense cult, you wouldn't have been able to enter the incense cult without a disciple leading the way. Zhang Xiaohua was astonished and said, Why is that? Above the moon is not called that for nothing. Nie Qianyu pursed her lips and smiled. Zhang Xiaohua pondered inwardly. The incense cult is a great cult of immortal Tao with a history of 10,000 years. Even the Misty Mountain Villa has a great formation protecting it, so the incense cult must also have one. The Misty Mountain Villa's formation was forcefully destroyed, but it seems that the incense cult is not destroyed. However, the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth has almost completely disappeared, so how does the incense cult maintain its formation? Looking at Zhang Xiaohua in deep thought, Nie Qianyu was a little anxious. Zhang Xiaohua just wanted to know whether her brother was alive or dead, but she couldn't help. However, looking at the smile on her father's face, she was bewildered. Does father already have a plan? Sure enough, after a moment, Valley Master Nie whispered, Nephew Ren, I have an idea. I don't know if you want to hear it? Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and hurriedly said, Uncle Nie, please tell me. Valley Master Nie looked at Nie Qianyu meaningfully and said, Rejuvenation Valley's medical skills and elixirs are not well known in Jianghu. Every once in a while, the incense cult will send people to Rejuvenation Valley to search for common herbs and elixirs. Most importantly, they will also select some boys from Rejuvenation Valley to manage herbs. Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised and asked curiously, Why doesn't the incense cult take in disciples themselves? Valley Master Nie smiled and said, Taking in disciples is different from doing odd jobs. The incense cult naturally has its own way of taking in disciples, but those who take care of the herb fields are considered odd jobs in the incense cult. Their status is relatively low and most disciples are not willing. Firstly, it will tarnish their status, and secondly, it will delay their cultivation. However, this herb field is the root of the pill-expanding hall. Ordinary people cannot be trusted and are not competent. Therefore, the incense cult has a headache over the odd jobs in this herb field. As early as the establishment of Rejuvenation Valley, there was a tacit understanding with the incense cult. Every once in a while, they will come to pick people, and we will try our best to train some people who have a rough understanding of herbs for the incense cult to use. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. No wonder those who wanted to kill Nie Qianyu didn't dare to blatantly come to their door. Rejuvenation Valley actually had such a relationship with the incense cult. However, he was even more puzzled and asked, Uncle Nie, how big is the herb field of the incense cult? They come to pick medicine boys every once in a while. Could it be that they have a shortage of people? Valley Master Nie smiled and said, This is what I don't know. I once inadvertently asked, but the disciples of the incense cult stuttered and didn't say anything. I also pretended that I didn't hear. I think that perhaps the incense cult's herb field is quite big, which is why they need more medicine boys. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Uncle Nie means, Valley Master Nie said, Nephew's guess is right. Generally speaking, people from Rejuvenation Valley come to Rejuvenation Valley in July and August. Although you are old, you look about 15 years old. It is reasonable to say that you are a medicine boy trained by Rejuvenation Valley. However, everyone in Jianghu knows about the martial arts competition, and it is not easy to hide it. We can only say that you are my future son-in-law and want to further your studies in the incense cult. With the friendship between Rejuvenation Valley and the pill-expanding hall, it should be possible. Nie Qianyu also said, This way, It will also shut the mouths of Jianghu people and prevent them from thinking about Rejuvenation Valley's marriage. After a few days, their memories will fade and Big Brother Ren will be able to get away. Her voice was getting lower and lower. Valley Master Nye glanced at his daughter and didn't say anything. Zhang Xiaohua said, "Uncle Nye, I still feel that it is inappropriate." "Why?" Valley Master Nye was somewhat puzzled. "This is my personal matter. If I use the name of Rejuvenation Valley, it will definitely be mixed up with Rejuvenation Valley. If something goes wrong in the future, it will inevitably implicate Rejuvenation Valley." Valley Master Nye frowned and said, "Nephew, do you want to make things difficult for the incense cult?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Isn't that like a mantis trying to stop a chariot? I am not so stupid. Will your sect interfere?" "No." "Then what does our Rejuvenation Valley have to worry about?" Valley Master Nye said with a face full of spring breeze. "Moreover, nephew saved little you and saved Rejuvenation Valley. What is the point of me doing such a small thing for nephew?" Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua stood up and bowed deeply, saying, "Uncle Nye, I am truly grateful." Valley Master Nye also stood up and helped Zhang Xiaohua up, saying with a smile, "Nephew, you are too polite. In the future, don't appear so distant in front of outsiders." Zhang Xiaohua said with a wry smile, "Uncle Nye, I have woken up, but I still need to get used to it." At this time, Elder Yu on the side asked, "You two fake father-in-law and son-in-law, after talking for so long, did you miss something?" Valley Master Nye said with a smile, "Brother Yu, are you saying that nephew Ren doesn't understand medicinal herbs?" Elder Yu said with a smile, "It is true. If nephew Ren doesn't understand medicinal herbs, why would the pill-expanding hall accept him?" Nye Qianyu said in a low voice, "Uncle Yu, didn't father say before? He is only going to let Brother Ren go to the incense cult and doesn't necessarily need to understand medicinal herbs. Moreover, there are still a few months before the incense cult comes. Let Brother Ren take a good look and learn a little. It's not like he is really going to grow medicinal herbs for them." Nye Qianyu said with some annoyance. Hearing their misgivings, Zhang Xiaohua said, "Speaking of this, you two uncles don't have to worry too much. My sect also has some knowledge of medicinal herbs. Although I don't specialize in managing them, I still know a little. If I have a few months to prepare, I think I can handle it." Valley Master Nye and Nye Qianyu's eyes lit up when they heard this. Valley Master Nye casually asked a few questions and Zhang Xiaohua spoke tirelessly without any fear. Valley Master Nye also listened and nodded frequently. Finally, Valley Master Nye said, "I didn't expect nephew Ren to have some foundation in growing and refining medicinal herbs in addition to having excellent martial arts. The rest is to learn a little in the Rejuvenation Valley." Nye Qianyu also said with a smile, "Yes, Brother Ren, I didn't expect you to know more than me. There are many details that I didn't notice." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, "Miss Nye is praising me. I have only dabbled in it a little. I am far from being proficient." Then she said to Valley Master Nye, "Uncle Nye, I actually have a presumptuous request that I want to discuss with you." Valley Master Nye said, "Nephew, you are one of us now. There is no harm in speaking." Zhang Xiaohua said, "I have followed Miss Nye all the way to the Rejuvenation Valley. I heard that she is quite proficient in medicine and pharmacology. I am curious and would like to learn. I wonder if Valley Master Nye can make an exception?" When Valley Master Nye heard this, his eyes flashed with surprise. He had an impulse of ecstasy as he said, "Nephew's words are beyond my expectations. In the Jianghu, everyone is thinking about how to improve their internal strength and practice more exquisite moves. Very few people like to study pharmacology and herbs. Even if they come to Rejuvenation Valley, they only want to ask for 1 or 2 pills. Just now, I thought nephew was like this, but I misjudged." "Oh no, I didn't misjudge. There is no problem with this request. Nephew Ren, I don't dare to say anything else, but there are still a lot of herbs, medicinal materials, medicine, qi huang techniques, pill techniques and so on in Rejuvenation Valley. If you have the energy, you can learn them all. Come, there are more chapters." Chapter 444. Zhang Xiaohua originally thought that her request was a bit too forceful and that Valley Head Nye might not agree. She didn't expect this to be the result. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua like this, Valley Head Nye smiled and said, "Nephew Ren, please don't blame me. I'm just a bit excited. It's been many years since someone as strong as you has asked me to learn the medical skills and pharmacology of Rejuvenation Valley. Even my 2 sons-in-law only asked for some pills." After speaking, he looked at Elder Yu and said, "Zhonglin is not bad, but he is also engrossed in the practice of internal strength. He can't control my Rejuvenation Valley." Elder Yu chuckled and said, "Everyone has their own fate. You can't force it." Hearing this, Nye Qianyu's face turned red again. Valley Head Nye said meaningfully, "Medical skills can not only save yourself, but also heal others. If you can master it, the benefits will be endless." Zhang Xiaohua was even happier when she heard this. She was just in the nameless town and had envied Nye Qianyu when she wrote her own prescription. She had long wanted to know the secret behind it. What she said just now was that she wanted to learn more about the cultivation of medicinal herbs to build a good foundation for her own alchemy. But now, listening to Valley Head Nye's words, Rejuvenation Valley's medical skills could also be taught. This was really a buy one get one free deal. Valley Head Nye sighed for a moment and said, "However, Rejuvenation Valley has existed for thousands of years. Its accumulation is as vast as the sea. You may not be able to see a drop of water in the ocean in a few months. If nephew has the heart, you should find what you are most interested in to learn. When you come back from the School of Fragrance, you can learn one by one. What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua was a bit puzzled and thought, if I came back from the School of Fragrance, why would I go to Rejuvenation Valley? However, Zhang Xiaohua still bowed and said, "Many thanks for Uncle Nye's teachings. I understand." Valley Head Nye then said, "Little you knows about the books, medicine fields, and medicine-making places in the valley. Let her accompany you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask her. If she can't answer, then come find me." Nye Qianyu felt sweet in her heart and secretly applauded her father's arrangement. At this point, everything had been settled. Valley Master Nye looked at the sky outside and smiled. "Nephew Ren, you are the main character today. The outer hall has prepared a banquet and it must have already started. No matter what, you should go and entertain some guests." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Valley Master Nye is mistaken. I've just turned 14 and am still underage. It's better if I don't go to the banquet." Valley Head Nye paused and then laughed loudly. "That's fine. Since virtuous nephew likes peace and quiet, I won't force you. Let's go, brother Yu. We still have to go out and deal with some people. These Jianghu friends have supported us for many days. If we don't let them drink to their heart's content, they'll say that Rejuvenation Valley is stingy." Elder Yu also stood up and said, "That's exactly my intention. Let's go." The two of them were about to get up and leave when they heard Zhang Xiaohua ask again, "That, Uncle Nye, where do I live? It can't be this Peach Blossom Nunnery." Valley Master Nye and Elder Yu looked at each other and laughed again. Valley Master Nye said, "Even if you want to stay tonight, I won't allow it." Nye Qianyu called out shyly, "Father." Valley Master Nye looked at his daughter lovingly and said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Virtuous nephew, feel free to ask little Yu about everything in the valley. I won't interfere." Nye Qianyu said in a low voice, "There's a small pavilion next to the Peach Blossom Nunnery. I've already had people tidy it up. Brother Ren can move in at any time." Zhang Xiaohua said awkwardly, Okay. Valley Master Nye and Elder Yu smiled and walked out. There were only 2 people in this exquisite hall. It was already late at night. The wind blew the curtains in the hall and the candlelight also flickered. For a moment, the two didn't speak and the silence was tight. After a while, Nye Qianyu said in a low voice, "Brother Ren, I really have to thank you for today's matter." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "Don't be so courteous, Fishy Nye. I've said this sentence many times today, so don't mention it again in the future. Besides, Uncle also helped me a lot, so shouldn't I mention it again? You and I are like this. You thank me and I thank you. Is there an end to it?" Nye Qianyu laughed and recovered the expression she had on the road in the morning. In an instant, the atmosphere in the hall also relaxed a lot. Zhang Xiaohua said, "Little Fish Nye, these 4 to 5 months can be long or short. Although I know a little about medicinal herbs, if we don't want people to see any flaws or make it legitimate, We'd better prepare early. Nye Qianyu nodded and said, Brother Ren is right. Wait a moment. I have some basic books here. I'll show you some first. If there's anything you don't understand, we'll discuss it together. What do you think? Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, I'll do as you say. Wait a moment. I'll be right back. After speaking, Nye Qianyu got up and walked out of the small hall. Seeing that everyone had left, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and sat on the chair. She thought to herself, the problem with the fragrant religion can be considered solved. It's better than I expected. In the past, I only wanted to ask for the location of the fragrant religion and enter alone to search for second brother's whereabouts. However, from what Valley Head Nye said just now, the fragrant religion is protected by formation and is extremely difficult to break in. My small sword may be able to break through the formation, but this kind of super large sect definitely has hidden experts. If they find out, it will be very dangerous. Now it's all good. I have a legitimate reason to enter without taking any risks. Of course, this is what I'm looking for. AI, Valley Head Nye still wants me to slowly deepen my relationship with Rejuvenation Valley. Looking at Valley Head Nye's style, he's also a straightforward and upright person. It's extremely good to interact more with him. However, he also sent my daughter. This is making things difficult for me. However, Little Fish Nye is actually not bad. My alchemy skills have reached a bottleneck on the deserted island. I've never had a suitable pill formula or medicinal herbs to practice on. I haven't actually practiced with many pills. This is great. Since Rejuvenation Valley also has the fasting pill, they must also have other pills. There's no harm in learning more. Within a few months, I'll be able to become proficient. There's also the Qi Huang technique. It's a very interesting thing. Since I have the opportunity to come into contact with it, I'd better take a look. Even if I can't master it, I'll strive to gain entry. Also, Rejuvenation Valley also has a legacy of thousands of years. Is there something interesting here as well? If I have time, I'd better investigate. If I can help Rejuvenation Valley unearth something that has long been lost, it can also be considered as repaying their kindness for teaching me. Just as she was thinking, she heard a series of footsteps at the door. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. Little Fishy Nye, when did you become so heavy? When he looked up, he saw a man a head taller than him. He looked like an iron tower as he walked in with large strides. He first looked around before fixing his gaze on Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing the man's malicious gaze, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, who is this? Before Zhang Xiaohua could speak, the man walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and sized her up. He cracked a smile and said, You don't have 3 heads and 6 arms, so why are you so powerful? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she understood a little. She cupped her hands and said, This one is Ren Xiaoyao. Are you looking for me? Or are you looking for Miss Nye? The man also saluted and said, I'm looking for you. I am Lu Meng of the weapon refining sect. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, This one doesn't seem to know Brother Lu. What business do you have with me? Lu Meng shouted, Of course I have business with you. Otherwise, who would come looking for you? Zhang Xiaohua smiled wryly. Then would Brother Lu please enlighten me? What are you talking about? Don't make yourself sound so polite. I heard that you won against many people in the arena today. I'm not convinced and want to compare notes with you. Little Yu is the junior sister of our sections. She can't be betrothed to someone for nothing. Zhang Xiaohua tilted her head and smiled. Then why didn't Brother Lu enter the arena? Why would I enter the arena? I don't want to be the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. Alright, also, you used an excuse to not attend the banquet. Don't you know that the disciples of our sects are all waiting for you? If it wasn't for the sect head. Speaking up to here, he seemed to realize that he had let the cat out of the bag and hurriedly corrected himself. If it wasn't for the sect head's disapproval, I would have brought my weapon over a long time ago. Zhang Xiaohua was startled. Valley Master Nye had just left and had probably just arrived at the banquet. This boor had already come knocking on her door. Wasn't this a bit too fast? With this thought in mind, she immediately released her divine perception. Sure enough, under a peach tree not far from the small building, a person was sneakily looking in her direction. Borrowing the moonlight that had just risen, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see that it was Rejuvenation Valley's second son-in-law, Chang Shang, who had been following her from the arena to the mountain villa. This Rejuvenation Valley doesn't seem to be some peach blossom spring. Zhang Xiaohua inwardly pondered. However, this boar had come knocking on her door. How was she going to deal with him? It shouldn't be difficult to defeat him, but she believed that there would be others coming after this person. She still had proper business to attend to. Who would have the patience to engage in internal strife with them? Hey, kid, what are you thinking about? Lu Meng called out, don't come up with any devious ideas. I know you have many tricks up your sleeves. You played everyone in the arena like a fool. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I was just thinking that since the Weapon Refining Sect and Rejuvenation Valley are so close, if we were to compete in martial arts, wouldn't it hurt the harmony between the two sides? Ah! Lu Meng cried out in surprise. Kid, you're really kind-hearted. You really have the same thoughts as me. I know your martial arts are powerful and you've defeated many people in the arena. I'm not here to compete in martial arts with you. This time, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be surprised. She said, if you're not here to compete in martial arts, why are you looking for me? If you're not here to compete in drinking, then I'll have to concede defeat. Lu Meng laughed and said, you're naturally no match for me in drinking. However, I'm here today to compete in strength with you. I'll let you know that there are also heroes in our Jade Foundation Alliance. Hearing this, a strange expression appeared on Zhang Xiaohua's face. Chapter 445. Hearing Lu Meng's words, Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of panic. She said, Big brother Lu, let's just compete in martial arts. Look at my thin arms and legs. How much strength do I have? How can I be your opponent? Right, you're the #1 expert of the weapon refining sect, right? Lu Meng said somewhat proudly, when it comes to martial arts, I'm in the top 10 of the younger generation of the weapon refining sect. It's nothing much. But when it comes to Big Brother Lu's strength, it's one of the best. Then, are you #1 or #2? Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have picked up on something. #2. Lu Meng said somewhat dejectedly. I have a shitty who's a bit stronger than me. That's strange. Zhang Xiaohua asked, he's your shitty, how can he be stronger than you? He should be younger than you. Who knows his strength? Lu Meng was about to explain when he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He immediately said sternly, Kid, don't change the topic. Tell me, are you going to compete or not? Zhang Xiaohua saw that her trick was exposed, but she wasn't angry. She said, I just feel that there's no meaning in a competition for no reason. Why don't we not compete? What do you mean by a competition for no reason? Lu Meng said angrily, if you lose, you must fulfill your promise. My promise? Zhang Xiaohua said blankly. When have I ever made an oath in front of you? Don't scare me. Lu Meng said, if you lose, you must do as you said before you went up the arena. Leave this Rejuvenation Valley tomorrow and leave my shitty. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Brother Lu is really a godly person. You're not even in the manor, but you know about the manor's matters. And as a disciple of the weapon refining sect, you actually meddle in the affairs of the Rejuvenation Valley. Aren't you afraid that Valley Head Nye will find out? This. Lu Meng was shocked and didn't know how to respond. He scratched his head with his big hand and said, I just want to compete with you in terms of strength. If your strength isn't as great as mine, then you're not worthy of junior sister. What I said to you just now was just a casual remark made by a few brothers at the banquet. If you don't take it seriously, then forget it. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself, this is a straightforward man. Chang Sheng only instigated him to challenge me and let me know that the waters of Rejuvenation Valley are a bit murky. I don't think Chang Sheng would use such a low-level method to make me leave Rejuvenation Valley and fulfill his promise. Lu Meng must have heard it casually at the banquet and casually used it as a reward when I asked. Thinking of the prize, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. She clapped her hands and said, Oh, Brother Lu, you can say these words in our villa. Don't tell others otherwise. Lu Meng waved his hand and said, Do you think I'm stupid? I just heard it from a few people in the sect. By the way, kid, can you be a bit more straightforward? At this moment, a voice came from behind. Senior brother Lu? Why aren't you drinking in the front? Why are you here? Wasn't it Nie Qianyu who rushed in from the back hall with many books in her arms? This. Lu Meng grinned and said, I heard that junior brother's martial arts are excellent. I'm here to compete with him. Senior brother Lu, what are you doing? Nie Qianyu was a bit angry and said, Brother Ren has been competing in the arena for a long time. He's tired enough. Don't make trouble here. Hurry up and go eat, or else I'm going to complain to your sect master. Junior sister. Don't be angry. I'll leave now. Hee, I'll leave now. After saying this, Lu Meng smiled apologetically and was about to leave. But at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua called out, Senior brother Lu, take care. Lu Meng was stunned and said, Kid, you kept pushing me back and forth because you were unhappy. Didn't you want to wait for junior sister to come back? Since she's back, why did you ask me to stay? Lu Meng was indeed right. Zhang Xiaohua was not in the mood to compete with him. This time, she had been chatting with him and waiting for Nie Qianyu to come back. But the prize that Lu Meng mentioned just now was exactly what Zhang Xiaohua wanted. Zhang Xiaohua said, Brother Lu, you misunderstood me. I don't have that kind of intention. I just want to know why Brother Lu wants to compete with me. Since you don't have any other purpose and only want to compete with me in terms of strength, and it won't hurt our friendship, I'm naturally willing to accompany you. Brother Ren? Nie Qianyu had a bad feeling. She had experienced this feeling more than once on the way back with Zhang Xiaohua. Sure enough, Lu Meng said excitedly. Brother, you're really a straightforward person. I've wronged you. Then, let's start the competition now? Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, It's easy to compete with strength. But as you said just now, it's really boring if we compete without any reason. Why don't we add a prize? Prize. Lu Meng was a little dumbfounded and kept winking at Zhang Xiaohua. Unfortunately, Zhang Xiaohua turned a deaf ear and said, If senior brother Lu wins, I'll leave Rejuvenation Valley tomorrow and fulfill my promise. But what if brother Lu loses? Nie Qianyu stared at Lu Meng with her eyes wide open. Lu Meng just waved his hand and said, Little junior sister, listen to me. I just want my brother-in-law to compete with me. I don't have any other thoughts. Really, even if he doesn't leave Rejuvenation Valley or Peach Blossom Nunnery for the rest of his life, I don't have any objections. You! Nie Qianyu's face turned red. Zhang Xiaohua urged from the side. Senior brother Lu, if I win, what are you going to use as a prize? Lu Meng scratched his head and couldn't think of anything at the moment. He only said, How can I lose? We're only competing with strength, not internal energy. Zhang Xiaohua held back her laughter and said, I'm just saying what if. You see, I've already taken out a prize. If you don't take out something, wouldn't it be very unfair? Nie Qianyu also said angrily, That's right, senior brother Lu. You can't bully people like this. But, I didn't bring any gold or silver. What can I use as a prize? Lu Meng said helplessly. Zhang Xiaohua mocked. So our weapon refining school is actually a style of empty-handed robbery. This is the first time I've heard of this. Who said so? Lu Meng was a little anxious. He stretched out his hand and took out everything in his chest and threw it on the table next to him. He said, Look, I didn't lie to you. I don't have any gold or silver. What do you like as a prize? At first glance, there was a worn-out handkerchief, a few worn-out jade pendants, a booklet with unknown writing on it, a snuff bottle, and some other miscellaneous items on the table. They were indeed worthless. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the booklet and smiled. What's this booklet? Lu Meng said disapprovingly. It's just some basic weapon refining methods of the weapon refining school. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes flashed with joy. She asked again, Where did these worn-out jade pendants come from? Are they valuable? These jade pendants were randomly picked up from the river. Last time I went to the pawn shop and asked. They weren't worth much, so I didn't pawn them. Lu Meng scratched his head. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, It seems that senior brother Lu's words are true. How about this? How about we use this booklet as a prize? It's not gold or silver anyway. Nie Qianyu finally knew what Zhang Xiaohua wanted. However, she was angry at Lu Meng for coming to provoke her, so she didn't bother to remind him. Sure enough, Lu Meng also frowned and said, "This booklet records our weapon refining school's weapon refining methods. Although it's not precious, it can't be passed to outsiders. It's not appropriate to use it as a prize." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Senior brother Lu won't lose, right? Why are you afraid of this?" But Lu Meng was not a fool. He said, "If I lose, won't this booklet be yours? How can I explain this to the school?" Zhang Xiaohua was still smiling and said, "Don't worry, even if you lose, this booklet will be with me first. I won't use my eyes to look at it, so what are you afraid of? When you have enough gold and silver tomorrow, you can come and redeem it." So it's like this. Lu Meng was a little tempted. He gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, we'll do as you say. Let's start the competition." Alas, this Lu Meng forgot. What good would it do him to compete with others? Whether Zhang Xiaohua goes or not, what does it have to do with you? Zhang Xiaohua stood up and said, "That's good. Little fish Nye, you have to be the witness." After saying this, she walked in front of Lu Meng and looked at the big man who was taller than her by a head. She said, "Senior brother Lu, how should we compete?" Lu Meng looked around and said, "There aren't any stone locks here, let's go to the arena." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and said, "How about this, senior brother Lu? I have an idea. We can compete here." Lu Meng said, "Quickly say it." Zhang Xiaohua pointed at the long sword next to the chair she was sitting on and said, "If brother Lu can raise that long sword above his head, then brother Lu wins this battle. What do you think?" Lu Meng's face turned red when he heard this. He said, "You brat, I sincerely want to compete with you, but you're making fun of me." "Senior brother Lu," Nye Qianyu said angrily. "Haha," Lu Meng smiled apologetically and said, "Don't worry, junior sister. I was a bit angry and spoke carelessly. Don't blame me." Nye Qianyu said, "Since big brother Ren says so, why don't you just raise it and have him admit defeat?" Lu Meng was extremely unhappy. He pointed at the long sword and said, "But, junior sister, this brat is obviously looking down on me. I can lift 10 of these broken things with one hand. He's obviously making fun of me." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Senior brother Lu hasn't tried yet. How do you know he can lift it? If he really can't lift it later, then the small book will temporarily belong to me." "Fine." Lu Meng gritted his teeth and said, "If I lift it, you." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "I'll immediately return home tomorrow and leave Rejuvenation Valley." "Junior sister." This is what he said. Lu Meng pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "It's not that I didn't give him a chance. If he loses, he has to honor the prize. Don't blame me then." After he finished speaking, he strode over to take the long sword. Chapter 446. Even though Zhang Xiaohua's sword looked ordinary, and even Nye Qianyu herself felt that she could pick it up, based on Nye Qianyu's understanding of Zhang Xiaohua, she knew that she wasn't someone who would suffer losses, so why would she come up with such a simple question? Thus, Nye Qianyu nodded her head, half believing and half doubting. Seeing that Nye Qianyu had also agreed, Lu Meng no longer had any scruples. He walked forward, bent down, and used his hand to grab the hilt of the sword. Smiling, he said, "Brother-in-law, don't go back on your words. Senior brother will now let you see the charm of the second strongest man of the crafting school." Io, following which, he couldn't finish his sentence. "This." Lu Meng looked at the ugly sword embryo lying on the ground in astonishment and muttered, "Impossible." Looking at the smiling Zhang Xiaohua and the equally astonished Nye Qianyu, at this moment, he finally believed that this harmless young soldier wasn't joking with him. Lu Meng solemnly held the sword hilt with his hand again. Using all his strength, he could only move it slightly. Then, he stood up again and spat on his palms. Rubbing his hands together, he bent down again and clasped his hands together. Only when his grip was firm did he shout, "Up!" Following Lu Meng's movements, the sword was slowly lifted up by him. Zhang Xiaohua was also surprised and secretly thought, "This boar's strength is really not small. Luckily, I didn't dare to be careless and only asked him to lift the sword." If he could lift it up, I would have lost. Although Lu Meng lifted the sword, the tip of the sword was still on the ground. After lifting the sword hilt to a certain height, Lu Meng's face turned red. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer and let go of the sword. The sword fell to the ground with a loud crash, causing the ground to shake. Nie Qianyu, who was watching from the side, was shocked. It looked like an ordinary long sword. Anyone would take a look at it, and they would definitely take a look at it. However, other than the first strange glance, no one would take a second look at it. It was the same for her. Moreover, the long sword had been on Zhang Xiaohua's back all the way. Even if Zhang Xiaohua used the long sword to defend herself, she would do so easily. She had always thought that the long sword was just an ordinary sword embryo that had not been successfully refined. She had never thought about its weight. The weight of this sword was actually so heavy. Suddenly, Nie Qianyu realized why Zhang Xiaohua didn't bring the sword to the arena. At this moment, Lu Meng rubbed his hands and stood aside awkwardly. His face was still red, and he looked at Zhang Xiaohua with some admiration. He was still somewhat unconvinced and asked, "That little brother-in-law, why don't you try lifting this sword? Why can't I believe it? How can you lift such a heavy thing with your small body?" Nie Qianyu was amused and said, "Senior brother Lu, don't embarrass yourself. Big brother Ren brought this sword here, so he must be able to lift it. Just use your brain to think. Besides, I saw it with my own eyes." Lu Meng scratched his head and said, "Little junior sister, I just wanted to see it with my own eyes." Zhang Xiaohua didn't answer. She walked forward, grabbed the sword with her left hand, and waved it in front of Lu Meng. A gust of wind blew, causing Lu Meng to take a few steps back. "How is it?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at Lu Meng with a smile, but from the corner of her eyes, she looked at the booklet on the table. Lu Meng said dejectedly, "Little brother-in-law is really brave. Such a heavy weapon, even if I use my internal energy, I won't be able to lift it. I lost." After saying that, he walked to the table, picked up the booklet, and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua with some hesitation. He said, "I'll leave this booklet with you first. When I come back, I'll exchange it with gold and silver." "All right, how much silver do you want?" "Anything is fine, just 300 to 500 taels will do." At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care about the scattered silver in her eyes, so she asked for a round number. The corner of Lu Meng's eyes twitched. He immediately gritted his teeth and said, 500 taels it is. However, this booklet is the unique study of our weapon refining sect, so you can't peek at it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Of course, didn't I just say that I won't use my eyes to look at it?" After saying that, she was about to take the booklet. Nie Qianyu, who had been silent all this while, suddenly laughed and said, "Big brother Ren, don't tease senior brother Lu anymore." Zhang Xiaohua was shocked, and Lu Meng was stunned. Lu Meng hurriedly retracted his hand. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the booklet and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Lu Meng opened his eyes wide and asked, "Little junior sister, what are you talking about?" Nie Qianyu smiled and said, "Senior brother Lu, do you think that since Big Brother Ren only took your booklet and didn't read it, he won't be able to see the contents and you won't be punished by the sect? You're relieved?" Lu Meng nodded his head vigorously. Nie Qianyu said again, "But, what if Big Brother Ren let me read it for him and then let me read it to him? Wouldn't he be able to know the refining method of your weapon refining sect without using his eyes?" This. Lu Meng suddenly understood. He stared straight at Zhang Xiaohua and asked, "Brother-in-law, is that what you plan to do?" Zhang Xiaohua had an innocent look on her face and spread out her hands. "I can only say that little fishy Nie is gauging the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. I swear to the heavens that I don't have such a plan at all." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua swear, Lu Meng's expression softened. However, his hands were still hesitant and didn't want to hand the booklet over. Nie Qianyu looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Big brother Ren, don't be angry with senior brother Lu anymore. He came to compete with you in terms of physical strength only because he wanted to let you know the strength of his family, so that you, towards the end," her voice was almost like a mosquito's and her face was burning red. Finally, she forced herself to say, "If you keep this booklet, even if you don't read it, senior brother Lu will definitely be punished by the sect." I think you should be magnanimous and let him off this time. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to cry in her heart. Little fishy Nye, where exactly are you siding with? However, she could only say, hee. Miss Nye indeed knows what I'm thinking. That's right, I want to punish you for listening to someone else's words and finding trouble with me. If I didn't let you know how powerful I am, I reckon there will be more people coming tomorrow. How did you know? Lu Meng pointed at Zhang Xiaohua in astonishment. Zhang Xiaohua smiled at Nye Qianyu and said, how can someone who can talk with Miss Nye not be smart? Hey! Nye Qianyu couldn't help but spit. Seeing this, Lu Meng hurriedly bowed deeply and said, then I'll apologize to brother-in-law. If it weren't for brother-in-law's bravery, I would have made a big mistake. However, as he spoke, his hands and feet moved quickly. He immediately put the booklet into his arms. Zhang Xiaohua's gaze was somewhat reluctant to part with it. Looking at the mess left on the table, Lu Meng grabbed a few jade pendants and stuffed them into Zhang Xiaohua's pocket. He said, no matter what brother-in-law has won against me, you must take this prize. These jade pendants are worthless. Take them as collateral. How could Zhang Xiaohua accept them? She said righteously, Senior Brother Lu, you've underestimated me. It was just a joke. Why take it so seriously? After saying that, she wanted to push the jade pendants back. However, as soon as she touched them, she felt the warmth in them. She couldn't help but scan them with her divine sense. Oh my! There was a faint fluctuation of primordial qi. Her pushing hand involuntarily stopped. Lu Meng heard that she wanted to refuse and moved away again. He then said, just take them. Although they are worthless, they are still old Lu's face. Tomorrow, I'll exchange them with the 500 taels of silver. Exchange? Zhang Xiaohua secretly laughed. How can you exchange them back? She quickly said even more righteously. Senior Brother Lu's words, why are they so unreliable? I've already said that it was just a misunderstanding. If I were to say that they were vulgar gold and silver, wouldn't it seem that I don't know how to conduct myself? How about this? Since Senior Brother Lu's face is here, I won't let him down. Anyway, these jade pendants are worthless. Since Senior Brother Lu doesn't care, I'll take them as my prize. After he finished speaking, he resolutely put the jade pendants into his bosom with a determined look on his face. Lu Meng was touched. He shook Zhang Xiaohua's arm and said, don't, brother-in-law. We'll be honest. How can these worthless jade pendants be used as a prize? Don't worry, brother-in-law. I'll definitely bring you the money tomorrow. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's face changed immediately. She said, Senior Brother Lu, you don't treat me as your own. If you're like this, I don't want these jade pendants. I'll just take it that Senior Brother Lu didn't come tonight. How can I accept this? Lu Meng was anxious and said, just as brother-in-law said, these jade pendants are just a prize. Alas, I didn't expect brother-in-law to have such noble character and unquestionable integrity. I'm so ashamed. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was very happy. She said with a smile, a long journey tests a horse's strength, and a long time reveals a person's heart. Senior Brother Lu, you'll know my character when we get to know each other. By the way, Senior Brother Lu, you won't let me leave tomorrow, right? Lu Meng said awkwardly, I won't. Brother-in-law, you are going to stay here for the rest of your life. I just want to congratulate you. I won't say no again. You. This time, Nye Qianyu couldn't accept it. Lu Meng knew that he had said something wrong, so he didn't dare to stay any longer. He cupped his hands and said, congratulations to brother-in-law for having such a day every year. I'll take my leave now. This time, Zhang Xiaohua's face couldn't hold back anymore. Looking at the back of Lu Meng hurriedly leaving, she could only shake her head again and again. The small hall, which had been noisy for a while, became quiet again. Everyone was congratulating Lu Meng for the last time. Zhang Xiaohua saw that Nye Qianyu lowered her head shyly and didn't say anything. She released her divine sense. As expected, when Chang Shang saw Lu Meng go out, he immediately came up to him. Although she couldn't hear anything, she knew that Lu Meng was angry. He pointed at Chang Shang and said something unpleasant. Zhang Xiaohua smiled when he saw Lu Meng swaggering off and Chang Sheng stomping his feet and chasing after him. At this time, Nie Qianyu said in a low voice, "Brother Ren, are you still angry because of what I said?" Chapter 447. Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly and asked in astonishment, "Little fishy Nie, why would I be angry with you?" Nie Qianyu spat and said, "Keep pretending, do you think I can't tell? Big brother Ren, do you want to see the refining methods of the refining sect?" Zhang Xiaohua looked helpless and touched her nose, saying, "Little fishy, can you not be so smart? You make people feel very insecure." Pfft. Nie Qianyu laughed out loud this time and said, "It seems that Big Brother Ren is not angry anymore." "Angry? Why would I be angry? I'm really not angry at all." Zhang Xiaohua refused to admit it. Seeing this, Nie Qianyu said carefully, "Big Brother Ren, don't be so narrow-minded. Actually, if you want to see the refining methods of the refining sect, it's not a difficult thing." Zhang Xiaohua became interested and turned to ask, "Isn't the refining methods of the refining sect a secret manual exclusive to the refining sect? How can you let outsiders see it?" "Big Brother Ren doesn't want to see the refining methods of the refining sect?" Nie Qianyu said casually. Zhang Xiaohua also disagreed and said, "As the saying goes, it's not a burden to learn more. If I have the chance to learn refining, why wouldn't I learn it?" "Big Brother Ren is really ambitious." Nie Qianyu said, "As a matter of fact, the basic skills in the alliance can be borrowed and learned from each other. Brother Ren only needs to ask father to borrow the skills from the refining school, and he will certainly be able to learn them. Why do you have to trouble senior brother Lu?" "Oh, that's fine too." Zhang Xiaohua was a little enlightened. This alliance is really an alliance. A lot of things can be shared. It's really not bad. "But, Big Brother Ren, don't expect too much," Nie Qianyu continued to explain. "The things that can be borrowed are the basics. The most profound ones are the secret manuals of the various sects, so they definitely can't be borrowed. But, Big Brother Ren, in this world, the most taboo is to bite off more than you can chew. As long as you can master the medicine manuals of the Rejuvenation Valley, it's already very good. After all, you still have to practice the martial arts of the sect." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. "You're right." However, he turned his head and said, "I still want to see how these weapons are made." Nie Qianyu sighed and said, "Alas, the weapon refining sect has declined. I heard from my father and the others that in the past, a long time ago, the weapon refining sect was a famous sect in the Jianghu. Many people would try their best to curry favor with the weapon refining sect in order to obtain a weapon. All right, Big Brother Ren, this weapon is not our current weapon. I heard that it is a very magical item, but it is a pity that it is something from myths and legends. The weapons forged by the armament refining sect and other sects are just a lot sharper. Of course, the weapon refining gate and the weapon forging gate have secret techniques that other sects don't have. They can create weapons that can be infused with inner strength, and they can also strengthen it." "Ah? A weapon that can strengthen one's inner strength?" Zhang Xiaohua was very surprised. This was the first time she had heard of such a magical thing. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's reaction, Nie Qianyu was a little surprised and said, "Big Brother Ren, don't tell me your sect doesn't have such a weapon?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said honestly, "Maybe they do, but I don't know." "Oh, I see." Nie Qianyu smiled. "These weapons are all divine weapons and are rarely seen in the Jianghu. Even if your sect has them, they will be kept as a tribute and may not let Big Brother Ren see them." Then she explained, "Increasing one's inner strength is not the same as increasing one's own inner strength. This kind of weapon can use a method to amplify the inner strength that is infused into the weapon. For example, if Big Brother Ren infuses 100% of his inner strength into a long sword, it will also be 100%. However, this long sword can amplify your inner strength by 10% or 30%, so the inner strength that is sent out through the long sword will be 110% or 130% of Big Brother Ren's original inner strength." "So magical." Zhang Xiaohua opened her mouth and said hatefully, "If I had known, I would have taken a look at the booklet." Pfft. Nie Qianyu laughed and said, "Didn't you say that you didn't have any bad intentions? Didn't you reveal it now? However, Big Brother Ren will be disappointed. Although Senior Brother Lu's position in the weapon refining sect is not low, He is absolutely not qualified to come in contact with such a top-secret skill. He, Zhang Xiaohua said resentfully. I was just excited to see him. How can I snatch his things for no reason? You're so stubborn. Nie Qianyu curled her lips. Sigh, the more you read, the more you feel that Nie Qianyu is cute. I want to make her the rightful wife. What a dilemma. She said, if you want to learn, you can talk to my father and learn the basics of the weapon refining sect. After a few years, when you have the foundation, you may be able to read it. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua did not speak, Nie Qianyu said thoughtfully. Although senior brother Lu looks very reckless, he is not a simple-minded person who likes to cause trouble. Why did he come to me tonight to compete with you in terms of strength? It's really strange. Zhang Xiaohua stroked her chin and said with an unfathomable expression, if it is as he said, that if I lose, I will leave Rejuvenation Valley tomorrow as promised. Do you think this is his true intention? Not at all, Nie Qianyu said with a charming smile. This kind of provocation is too clumsy. Even senior brother Lu himself might not be able to use it, let alone when he was instigated by someone else. Zhang Xiaohua said with a face full of surprise. Little you also know that he was instigated by someone else? I thought that I was the only one who knew. Nie Qianyu laughed so hard that she swayed back and forth. After a long while she said faintly, Big Brother Ren, you really know how to joke. Sigh, I just don't know who told him to come and what his intentions are. Zhang Xiaohua asked with a deep meaning. Could it be that you really don't know? Nie Qianyu was startled and asked in return. Could it be that you know? Zhang Xiaohua spread out her hands and said, if even you don't know, why would I know? Nie Qianyu also spread out her hands and said, if I knew, would you also know? Suddenly, Nie Qianyu felt that this sentence was ambiguous. It reminded her of the poem, without the wings of a colorful phoenix, our hearts are as one. She immediately blushed again. It seemed that Nie Qianyu blushed a frightening number of times when she was with Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua also realized something and changed the topic, asking, what books did you take? Only then did Nie Qianyu realize. She hurriedly pointed to the pile of books on the table beside her and said with a smile, these are the books that I usually read in the study. I picked some of the more basic ones. Big Brother Ren, take a look first. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Zhang Xiaohua roughly skimmed through the pile of books. There were books on the planting of medicinal herbs, the sorting of medicinal herbs, the recording of pill formulas, acupuncture, human meridians, and decoctions. In short, they were very detailed. Zhang Xiaohua was touched when he saw them. Even though Zhang Xiaohua had not officially joined a sect, he was aware that this pill formula was definitely the most important thing in a sect. At least, he had never heard He Tianshu mention it before. Now that Nie Qianyu casually brought it to him, it seemed that she had no intention of hiding it. Zhang Xiaohua picked up the pill formula and looked at Nie Qianyu with clear eyes. He said, Little fish Nie, this is probably the treasure of your Rejuvenation Valley. Isn't it a little too early for you to give it to me now? Nie Qianyu also met his eyes and said without blinking, since father asked me to give it to you, I think you're qualified to read it, so I took it for you. If you don't want to read it, then I'll take it back. As she spoke, she was about to snatch it. Zhang Xiaohua retracted his hand and dodged. He blinked and said with a smile, when did I say that I don't want to read it? I'm just saying that it's too early. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua carefully put the pill formula in the pile of books, a sweet smile appeared on Nie Qianyu's face. The two of them sat down. Nie Qianyu carefully explained the general content of these books and the order of reading them to Zhang Xiaohua. Finally, seeing that the sky was already dark, she said, Big Brother Ren, it's already late. I think you should rest early. Anyway, there's still a lot of time in the future. It won't be too late to read it slowly. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, that's true. You must be exhausted. Rest early. After speaking, he stood up, bent down to pick up the long sword, and was about to take the books again. Nie Qianyu waved her hand and said, Big Brother Ren, just take the long sword. I'll take the books for you. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the pile of books on the table and said with a smile, then I'll have to trouble you. After speaking, he went up and took a few books with his other hand. When Nie Qianyu saw that he was holding the long sword so easily, she couldn't help but ask, Big Brother Ren, what's your long sword made of? Why is it so heavy? If not for Senior Brother Lu being unable to pick it up today, I would almost think that it's an ordinary sword embryo. Zhang Xiaohua waved it around and said, I picked it up from a barren mountain. Who knows what it is? It's just that it's unusually heavy, so it's easy to use. Nie Qianyu asked again. Big Brother Ren wants to learn the techniques of the weapon refining sect. Do you want to refine this sword embryo into a real long sword? Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, I don't know what material this thing is made of. I reckon that the weapon refining sect might not have a way to refine it. Nie Qianyu nodded and said, if Big Brother Ren wants to refine this sword embryo, it's best to find the weapon refining sect. They have a unique way of making some strange weapons. The weapon refining sect might not be as good as them. Zhang Xiaohua said, is there a difference? The weapons produced by the weapon refining sect and the weapon refining sect are similar, but both sects have their own specialties. For example, the weapon refining sect's swords are sharper, while the weapon refining sect can refine strange weapons. However, in terms of increasing internal energy, both sects are similar. I see. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. It seems that one day, I'll have to let the people from the weapon refining sect come and provoke them. I'm afraid that they won't bother with me coming here for no reason. Bah! Nie Qianyu couldn't help but spit again. Chapter 448. The two of them chatted and laughed as they walked to the door. Someone was already waiting for them with a lantern. It was Little Orange. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua, Little Orange smiled and said, Young master, are you going back to rest? Zhang Xiaohua said, Little Orange, we haven't seen each other for half a day. Why are you so talkative? It's better to call you Brother Ren. Little Orange was not satisfied and argued. Master has instructed me not to expose myself. I still have to call you young master in public. Zhang Xiaohua pointed to the darkness outside and said, Where did this person come from? Nie Qianyu also said, Little Orange, don't make things difficult for Brother Ren. If you call him that, I'll also feel embarrassed. It's just a pretense. Little Orange smiled and said, Miss, don't feel embarrassed. If you feel embarrassed, someone will be even more pleased. Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and did not say anything. Nie Qianyu laughed and scolded, Little Orange, quickly lead the way. You've been tired for the whole day. Let's quickly settle Brother Ren down and rest. Little Orange then stopped joking and led the way with the lantern. He led the two of them to the front of the small building. This was a two-story loft. There was a low wall outside and a small door. The door was open and light shone from inside. Zhang Xiaohua and the two of them walked to the door. Two maidservants hurriedly came out from the courtyard and greeted them. They took the books in their hands and walked into the small building together. Nie Qianyu pointed at the two of them and said, Brother Ren, this is Mo Mei and Mo Ju that father left behind to serve you. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she quickly waved her hands and said, Forget it, little fish Nie. I was born to be served by no one. Take them back with you. Okay. Nie Qianyu did not refuse this time. She might not feel at ease leaving the two maidservants in the building. After the four of them left, Zhang Xiaohua closed the door and blocked the door with her long sword. She then took out the jade pendant from her bosom and counted it as her spoils of war. There were a total of 4 jade pendants of different sizes, all of them emitting a weak yuan qi fluctuation. But when Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense entered, she discovered that the yuan qi in 3 of them had already dissipated. Most of the content recorded inside had already been lost and could not be understood. Only one of the smallest jade pendants was still intact. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had just entered when immediately 4 large words were projected into the jade pendant. We're rich. Zhang Xiaohua cheered and did a somersault on the ground. She was extremely happy. Just now, she had schemed for a long time at Nie Qianyu's place to obtain Lu Meng's booklet. Unfortunately, Nie Qianyu saw through her and she did not succeed. However, the jade pendant that Lu Meng treated as a piece of junk actually recorded the extremely important weapon refining general principles of the weapon refining sect. It had to be said that Zhang Xiaohua's character was really extraordinary. She could not help but despise Lu Meng. He really had eyes but could not see the jade inlaid with gold. Alas, Lu Meng could not be blamed. This jade pendant could only be read by divine sense. He was only a mortal with his naked eyes. How could he see through it? Moreover, the current Zhonghu was an endless treasure for Zhang Xiaohua, who had divine sense. She could pick and choose and slowly search for it. After Zhang Xiaohua celebrated her outburst of good luck, she took out a straw prayer mat from her purse and threw it on the ground. She then took out a few jade slips from her bosom and set up a formation. Only then did she sit cross-legged and immerse her divine sense into the jade pendant, carefully reading the weapon-refining general principles. After a long time, the sky gradually darkened. Zhang Xiaohua finally opened her eyes and carefully put the jade pendant into her purse. She muttered to herself, "So this weapon-refining general principles is not an extremely precious item. It is only the most basic introduction to weapon refining and a simple method of weapon refining. However, this is also good. I am only using it to refine formations. If it was more profound, I would have no use for it." Weapon refining is actually different from pill refining. I thought that since I had learned pill refining, I would be able to easily learn weapon refining. I was still a frog in a well. However, thinking about it, if pill refining and weapon refining could be interconnected, then Rejuvenation Valley would also be able to refine weapons. Why would there be a need for the weapon refining sect and the weapon forging sect? Also, this weapon refining general principles talks about immortal weapon refining methods. Only immortal weapon refining methods can be used to refine weapons. This weapon refining sect has already transformed into martial arts, so how do they refine weapons? Moreover, it can actually increase inner strength. This secret is indeed amazing. I forgot. Since the inner strength of martial arts can be infused into weapons, then can the true chi of immortals be infused into weapons as well? It's already late. When I have free time in the future, I should try pouring true chi into the small sword. However, is the warm current in my left arm also true chi? Thinking of the dense purple chi circulating between the small sword and her left arm, Zhang Xiaohua faintly felt that the warm current in her left arm should be something different from the true chi in her meridians. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua took out vitality stones from her bosom and began her nightly cultivation routine. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Xiaohua had already stayed in Rejuvenation Valley for more than 2 months. In the beginning, everyone in the valley covered their mouths and laughed when they saw Zhang Xiaohua, calling her son-in-law. Zhang Xiaohua naturally didn't give any celebration money. After a few protests, everyone changed to calling her young master, under Valley Head Nie's forceful command. This way, Zhang Xiaohua was slightly more accustomed to it. Moreover, after 2 months of understanding, Zhang Xiaohua gradually understood that Rejuvenation Valley was divided into 2 areas. The inner valley was at the entrance of the valley, which was the core area. Outside of the entrance of the valley was the mountain villa, which was considered the outer valley. Everyone in Rejuvenation Valley lived in the outer valley. The outer valley was also divided into 3 areas, namely Qihuang, medicinal herbs, and medicinal pills. They were distributed in different areas of the outer valley. Medicinal pills were at the entrance of the valley, which was the central area of the outer valley. Qihuang was at the periphery of the mountain villa, which was the entrance. Most of the other areas belonged to medicinal herbs. The one in charge of Qihuang was Valley Head Nie's eldest disciple, Mu Qingxian. He was a middle-aged man who didn't look much younger than Valley Head Nie. Mu Qingxian specialized in acupuncture and medicine. He only had a rough understanding of martial arts. Mu Qingxian also had a dozen or so young disciples who mainly studied medicine. In terms of martial arts, they were the same as their master, sloppy and ordinary. The one in charge of medicinal herbs was Valley Head Nie's second disciple, Fei He. There were also a few younger disciples helping him. Among these disciples, there was one who was more outstanding in martial arts. Zhang Xiaohua felt that he looked familiar. After asking, she found out that she had seen him on the arena of the marriage contest. He was a member of the first group to be eliminated. Thinking about it, Rejuvenation Valley and the weapon refining sect wouldn't just stand by and watch. Presumably, the small group of 4 people was Rejuvenation Valley's chess pieces. Unfortunately, they were eliminated as soon as they went on stage. Fei He had a lot of subordinates, but he only had 1 or 2 disciples. They weren't very outstanding. His other junior brothers hadn't reached the age of teaching disciples yet. Therefore, Rejuvenation Valley felt that there was a shortage of young people. In terms of medicinal pills, Valley Head Nye didn't assign anyone else to be in charge. After all, it was the core resource of Rejuvenation Valley. Before there was a considerate, reliable, and worry-free candidate, Valley Head Nye probably wouldn't give up the authority. Although the marriage contest was Rejuvenation Valley's way of saving Nye Qianyu, it was also Valley Head Nye's way of seeking talents. Zhang Xiaohua's appearance was really in line with Valley Head Nye's standards. Especially his unpredictable martial arts cultivation, it was as if it was tailor-made for him. Therefore, he ordered Nye Qianyu to guide Zhang Xiaohua's learning. Moreover, he also knew that his younger daughter would definitely give as many books as possible to Zhang Xiaohua. The pile of books that Nye Qianyu gave to Zhang Xiaohua the day before was very complicated. It contained various kinds of unique skills of Rejuvenation Valley, and medicinal herbs and alchemy took up a large part of it. Zhang Xiaohua had already practiced Immortal Fire Dragon's Jade Slip on the deserted island and was very proficient in alchemy. It was just that she lacked raw materials and couldn't practice alchemy. Although this part of the books was very important to Rejuvenation Valley, it had lost its original meaning to Zhang Xiaohua. Of course, what was recorded in the Jade Slip was only the way of immortality and the cultivation methods of medicinal herbs. Many of them were no longer suitable for the present. The books of Rejuvenation Valley happened to make up for the shortcomings. Zhang Xiaohua specially read these books for the first 10 days or so. Although the cultivation of medicinal herbs and alchemy of martial arts were poles apart from the way of immortality, their essence was the same. Zhang Xiaohua had already understood the essence. Naturally, it was very easy for her to learn the details of martial arts and alchemy. Nye Qianyu thought that Zhang Xiaohua would keep asking her, but she didn't come for several days. When Zhang Xiaohua appeared, she just asked a little and asked Nye Qianyu to take her to see the actual operation, which made Nye Qianyu very surprised. As long as the cultivation of medicinal herbs was in the outer valley, there was nothing to hide. She let Zhang Xiaohua see everything. However, the place of alchemy was in the inner valley. Nye Qianyu still needed to report to her father, so she couldn't take Zhang Xiaohua to see it without permission. Zhang Xiaohua was also not in a hurry, as if she had a well-thought-out plan. Later, when Valley Master Nye knew that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to see alchemy, he was surprised and couldn't figure out why Zhang Xiaohua was so talented. When Nye Qianyu went to find Zhang Xiaohua again, Zhang Xiaohua was already carefully learning the art of Qi and Huang. Nye Qianyu was furious. Alchemy was Rejuvenation Valley's unique skill, and the art of Qi and Huang was only supplementary. She didn't focus on alchemy, but instead went to learn the art of Qi and Huang. Wasn't she neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles? When Zhang Xiaohua first started learning medical skills, she only felt that alchemy could produce miraculous pills, but it might not be useful for ordinary people's illnesses. Nye Qianyu's medical skills in the nameless town that day were far superior to the local doctors. If she could learn some medical skills in Rejuvenation Valley, she might really be able to benefit herself and heal others, as Valley Master Nye said. He had originally wanted to learn the art of Qi Huang out of curiosity, but when he carefully looked at Rejuvenation Valley's acupuncture techniques and medicinal decoctions, and combined them with his own knowledge of the immortal Tao, he discovered that the mysteries within were far from what they appeared to be on the surface. There was truly a lot more to it. Moreover, there were things that he had never thought of before Qi Dian. Chapter 449. Speaking of the arts of Qi and Huang, one had to talk about the human body. Although Zhang Xiaohua cultivated the immortal Tao and tempered his meridians, in reality, he had never really had the opportunity to systematically study the knowledge of the immortal Tao. In fact, even the immortal Tao only had outstanding research on the human body's meridians, and did not have an extremely detailed understanding of the human body as a whole. Of course, the immortal Tao's cultivation techniques were as brilliant as the stars, and there were also many body tempering techniques. However, these body tempering techniques were the same as Qi tempering techniques, They all focused on how to temper the body to a tyrannical state. They would never clearly explain the functions of the heart, lungs, liver, and other organs, or how to regulate them. Of course, they would not carefully study the characteristics and illnesses of the ordinary human body. And after careful study, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized one day that the things in these people's bodies felt very familiar. Thinking about it carefully, didn't it coincide with the heavenly Tao that he had been comprehending all day long? With this thought, the more Zhang Xiaohua studied, the more he found that there were many traces of the heavenly Tao. Could it be that there was also a miniature of the heavenly Tao in this person's body? Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat in disbelief. However, what surprised him was the concept of the 5 elements and the theory of yin and yang in the study of the human body. These were not comprehended by Zhang Xiaohua himself from the heavenly Tao, but he could actually find the corresponding content from these things when he compared them with the outline of the heavenly Tao in his mind. In an extremely short period of time, Zhang Xiaohua's understanding of the heavenly Tao entered a whole new level, and the Carefree Heart Sutra cultivation technique also improved greatly. What was even more amazing was yet to come. When Zhang Xiaohua had a little foundation in the art of Qi and Huang, more than 20 days later, he began to study acupuncture. Acupuncture used the power of needles and stones to stimulate the acupoints of the human body and adjust the balance of the human body through the meridians to achieve the goal of treating illness and pain. From this art of acupuncture, Zhang Xiaohua first understood the harmony and adjustment of the heavenly Tao, so that the heavenly Tao he knew was no longer static and stagnant, but gradually became more dynamic and lively, closer to the truth. Secondly, because illness and pain were not limited to the meridians cultivated in martial arts, but were distributed throughout the entire human body, the acupoints involved in acupuncture also covered the entire human body, and the meridians that could be stimulated were also far beyond what internal energy could reach. These things had no meaning to other cultivators of martial arts or the way of immortality, but Zhang Xiaohua had just obtained a detailed map of the meridians of the human body when Zhang Xiaohua was born, and had been worried that he could not put it into practice and find a way to cultivate from it. Now, it was good that he had found a breakthrough. All of the above had led Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation to a whole new path, a path that no one had ever walked before. How could he not be fascinated by it? Therefore, except for the first 10 days when he had just entered Rejuvenation Valley, Zhang Xiaohua spent the next 40 days in Mu Qingxuan's Qihuang courtyard, learning pharmacology, studying the human body, practicing acupuncture, and helping to look, listen, question, and feel the pulse, learning how to treat people. Because Zhang Xiaohua's learning was not simply learning how to treat people, but looking at the changes in the human body from the perspective of the evolution of the way of heaven. It could even be said that he was studying the pain of the human body from the level of life and death of the way of heaven. Birth, old age, sickness and death were part of the way of life and death. Looking at the pain from the way of life and death, one could often see the essence better. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua was often able to find the root of the pain from a deeper level. Then he could learn from Mu Qingxian and the others' acupuncture methods or medicinal stone methods, using the evolution of the way of heaven as the essence to think about the correction of the human body's pain. Not only was it of great help to his own cultivation, but it also gave him a unique insight and method in the treatment of pain. In the beginning, Mu Qingxian knew his master's thoughts. He thought that Zhang Xiaohua would put in a lot of effort in the area of medicinal pills. He just wanted to roughly understand the situation in Rejuvenation Valley in Qi Huang Courtyard. But with Zhang Xiaohua's daily research and his huge improvement every day, Mu Qingxian had to reconsider his attitude towards Zhang Xiaohua. He immediately reported this situation to Valley Master Nye. Although Valley Master Nye said that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to learn the art of Qi Huang out of benevolence, it was only because of Zhang Xiaohua's character. He did not fully support the learning of the art of Qi Huang. Naturally, he still wanted Zhang Xiaohua to learn more about medicinal pills. But seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was so infatuated, he was embarrassed to stop her. He only let Mu Qingxian teach her well. Mu Qingxian received his master's instructions and was even more attentive. His disciples were not diligent, nor were they not outstanding. But compared to Zhang Xiaohua, who had only been in contact for a few dozen days and was able to comprehend by analogy and had her own unique treatment method, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. After a few dozen days of learning, Mu Qingxian gradually found that for ordinary diseases, Zhang Xiaohua's treatment method was not much different from others. But it was often some difficult and complicated diseases that made him and his disciples scratch their heads. Zhang Xiaohua had a very good method. She could even find some acupuncture points that he did not know and help treat. Of course, in terms of the dosage of medicinal stones and proficiency in acupuncture, these were still a little immature. But this was the accumulation of experience. After a certain period of time, it would naturally be done. A genius, a genius. Every time Mu Qingxian saw Valley Head Nye, he would praise him like this and ask, Master, could it be that when one's martial arts are strong, they will comprehend by analogy and their medical skills will also be brilliant? Valley Head Nye didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although having some success in martial arts would certainly give one a deep understanding of the meridians and acupuncture points, which would be of great help to the study of medical skills, it wouldn't be enough to create a godly doctor. More importantly, medical skills were only a small Dao and not the foundation of Rejuvenation Valley. What he wanted Zhang Xiaohua to learn was Dan medicine and alchemy. Therefore, on a certain day 2 months later, the weather had already warmed up. Early in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua had just finished practicing the Big Dipper magical fist and was about to hurry to Qi Huang courtyard to be his intern when Valley Head Nye came knocking on the door. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was about to go out again, Valley Head Nye asked, Virtuous nephew Ren, I heard that you have been studying very hard during this period of time, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please forgive me. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Uncle Nye is too polite. You let Lady Nye move all of Rejuvenation Valley's assets in front of me and I only have feelings of gratitude. How could I have any resentment? Valley Head Nye said that's good. However, I heard that virtuous nephew Ren has been immersed in medical skills recently. I wonder how your studies are going? When medical skills were mentioned, Zhang Xiaohua had a satisfied smile on her face and said, Speaking of this, I still have to thank Uncle Nye again for agreeing to pass on such a miraculous technique to me. Miraculous technique? Valley Head Nye smiled slightly and said, It's just a subtle technique. Only someone like me who has never seen it before would say that it's miraculous. You can ask the people in Qi Huang courtyard. How many of them would say that it's miraculous? After this period of time together, Zhang Xiaohua naturally knew the opinions of the people in Qi Huang courtyard. Unfortunately, she was unable to explain the miraculous aspects of this medical skill, so she could only smile and say, It seems that I have underestimated myself. However, I feel that with medical skills, you can cure all kinds of diseases in the world. There are also merits to it. Alas, the people in Jianghu all licked blood from their blades. It has always been the external injuries that bleed more and the broken arms and legs more. Even if this medical skill can cure all the people in the world, but for Rejuvenation Valley, it only has a good reputation. Valley Head Nye smiled bitterly. Yes, although the good reputation was good, it did not help one's status in Jianghu at all. It could not be blamed that Valley Head Nye did not attach importance to it. Zhang Xiaohua understood very well. Zhang Xiaohua continued to ask, I just don't know why Valley Head Nye is looking for me today. If there is nothing, I would like to go to Senior Brother Mu to learn more. Valley Head Nye saw this and could only go straight to the point. He frowned and said, Nephew Ren, we originally agreed that you must learn the art of alchemy and learn more about the cultivation of medicinal herbs. Only then can you meet the requirements of the missionary incense cult. Only then can you sneak into the missionary incense cult. But you are only immersed in medical skills. Aren't you neglecting your proper duties? If you reveal yourself in the missionary incense cult, won't you be harming others and yourself? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she immediately understood the purpose of Valley Head Nye's visit. She smiled and said, Uncle Nye, don't worry. The books on medicinal herbs and alchemy that Miss Nye brought over, I have more or less read them. You also know that I have learned a little in the past. The first thing I learned was the medicinal herbs and alchemy that Miss Nye brought over. But because alchemy requires internal strength, in order to get your permission, I have not read it. But regarding medicinal herbs, I feel that I have learned enough and now I should be able to put it into practice. As the saying goes, practice leads to true knowledge. So I have spent most of my time learning medical skills. Furthermore, through the study of medical skills, I discovered. Zhang Xiaohua paused for a moment before continuing with a regretful tone. I discovered that medical skills are truly miraculous. They aren't any worse than alchemy. Valley Head Nye did not agree. He had been immersed in medical skills for many years and knew that he knew more than Zhang Xiaohua. So he continued to say, Nephew, how long do you think you will be studying in Qi Huang courtyard? This. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, Medical skills are broad and profound. The mystery of it is not something that can be learned in a short period of time. But, I have already learned the basics of medical skills. In the future, as long as I practice more, I should be able to master it completely. Valley Head Nye was skeptical and said, "Is this your own feeling or Qing Xian's words?" "It was senior apprentice brother Mu who told me a few days ago." Zhang Xiaohua did not hide it. That's good. Nephew Ren, you should continue to study in Qi Huang Courtyard for the next few days. But in your free time, you should read more books on alchemy. After a few days, I will bring you to see the real core of Rejuvenation Valley and see how this alchemy is made. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, "That's great. I will follow Uncle Nye's arrangements." Chapter 450. When Mu Qingxian of the Qihuang Courtyard heard the news that Zhang Xiaohua was going to the Inner Valley, he was very reluctant. He knew that Zhang Xiaohua was able to learn medicine to such an extent in just a month. Her future achievements were absolutely limitless. Even his master might not be able to compare with her. However, this was Jiang Hu. Zhang Xiaohua was first a martial arts master, then a compassionate doctor. Therefore, although he was wringing his hands and sighing at the disappearance of a godly doctor, he did not do anything unnecessary to stop her. In the last few days, he carefully explained his medical experience to Zhang Xiaohua. He also taught her some of his works and precious ancient books. Zhang Xiaohua was also confused by Mu Qingxian. She was just going to the Inner Valley to see the alchemy. It was not like she would never come back to the Qihuang Courtyard again. Was there a need to be like this? However, this was a good opportunity to learn. Zhang Xiaohua also listened very seriously, absorbing the essence of this magical medical skill. After a few more days, Mu Qingxian said, "Ren Xiaoxia, this medical skill, I have almost finished. People have 7 emotions: happiness, anger, worry, longing, sorrow, fear, shock. There are also 5 internal organs: heart, lungs, liver, spleen, and kidney. They all contain the 5 elements. Happiness belongs to fire. The heart belongs to the 5 internal organs. Anger belongs to wood. The liver belongs to the 5 internal organs. Worry and sorrow belong to metal. The lungs belong to the 5 internal organs. Longing belongs to earth. The spleen belongs to the 5 internal organs. Fear and shock belong to water. The kidneys belong to the 5 internal organs. The 5 elements can be seen. Wood restrains earth, earth restrains water, water restrains fire, fire restrains metal, and metal restrains wood. Therefore, anger restrains thought. Thought restrains fear or shock restrains joy. Joy restrains worry or sorrow, and worry restrains grief and anger. Of course, the 5 elements are not only restrains, but also engenders, multiplies, regrets, and so on. Mu Qingxuan's summary of the 5 elements of medicine made Zhang Xiaohua's heart itch. She thought, "Isn't this the heavenly law of the 5 elements?" She calmed her heart and slowly savored it. After Mu Qingxian finished talking about the 5 elements of medicine, he did not stop. He continued, "Yang on the outside, Yin on the inside, Yang on the top, Yin on the bottom, Yang on the back, Yin on the inside, Yang on the skin, Yang on the outside, Yin on the inside, Yang on the head, Yang on the top, Yin on the bottom." When the human body's yin and yang lose balance, there will be various symptoms. The ancient people's classification of symptoms will be represented by yin. Yang syndrome, general symptoms: fever, thirst, rapid pulse, fast, etc. These symptoms are also known by the ancients as heat, that is yang syndrome. Yin syndrome, the general symptoms are no fever, no thirst, cold hands and feet, slow pulse, etc. These symptoms are also known as cold or yin. There are many types of medicinal herbs, but their properties are mostly yin and yang. In terms of medicinal properties, cold, heat, warm, cool, warm, 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 cool, warm, warm, cool, and cold cool. Warm is yang, cold is yin. In terms of treatment, the general principle is to adjust yin and yang and balance it out. This is the basic starting point of treatment. Regarding the rise and fall of yin and yang, We take measures to make up for the deficiency and eliminate the excess, so that the abnormal phenomenon of yin and yang can be corrected and restore the relative balance. This was the theory of yin and yang in medicine. Zhang Xiaohua had compared the 5 elements of medicine with the 5 elements of heaven, and had benefited a lot. At this time, after listening to the theory of yin and yang, and comparing it with the way of life and death of heaven, she felt that it was quite consistent. She felt that everything was very clear, and it was very enlightening. But when he heard the key part, Mu Qingxian suddenly stopped. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but anxiously ask, "Senior brother Mu, why don't you continue?" Mu Qingxian was also surprised. "This is what I have comprehended for many years, and also all the records in the existing books. Could it be that Ren Xiaoxia still feels that it is not enough?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned, as Senior brother Mu said, "I feel that the content is very profound, and the mysteries are indescribable, but, when Mu Qingxian heard this, he shamefully said, "It seems that Ren Xiaoxia is really a heaven-sent genius. I really can't compare. Just now I said so much, but a lot of it was from the book. I know that Ren Xiaoxia's time is limited, so I told him what I understood and what I saw. If Ren Xiaoxia has any questions, you can look at the book I gave you. If there are still no answers, then you can only study it yourself." "Oh, so it's like that." Zhang Xiaohua somewhat understood. This theory of yin and yang had always been based on one's own personal opinion. If one blindly agreed with others, it might not be suitable for oneself. She had the understanding of heaven, so as long as she found the right direction, would there be a time when she would not be able to understand it? So, Zhang Xiaohua stood up and deeply bowed. "Many thanks to Senior brother Mu for teaching me." Mu Qingxian didn't dare accept it, so he also quickly stood up and returned the courtesy. "Ren Xiaoxia's medical skills are incomparable to ordinary people, but unfortunately, you have more important things to do." "What a pity, what a pity." Zhang Xiaohua smiled, but didn't answer. What she pursued was the heavenly Tao so she could better understand it through her medical skills. If it was purely for her medical skills, it would be making a big fuss over a minor issue. Mu Qingxian then said, "Today, Master told me that Ren Xiaoxia doesn't need to come here tomorrow. Junior sister will go look for you, and she might go to the inner valley to practice alchemy." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she nodded. "Many thanks to Senior brother Mu for telling me. I will take my leave now. When I have free time in the future, I will come again to ask Senior brother for advice on the 5 elements and yin and yang." Naturally, Mu Qingxian agreed. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua finished practicing the Big Dipper fist art in the courtyard and didn't go out. She sat cross-legged in her room and combined her gains from the past 10 days with her own understanding of the heavenly Tao. Time slowly passed by. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved, and she opened her eyes with a smile. Sure enough, she saw Nie Qianyu briskly coming in from the outside. Before she entered, she shouted, "Big brother Ren, Big brother Ren." Zhang Xiaohua stood up and skillfully put the green praying mat into his money pouch. He smiled and replied, "It's here. Little fish Nie, if you keep shouting like that, this pavilion is going to collapse because of you." Nie Qianyu entered and sweetly smiled. "Big brother Ren has been studying medicine with Senior brother Mu at the Qi Huang courtyard. Aren't the doctors all old men with bad hearing? Presumably, Big brother Ren will also be affected by this deafness. If I lower my voice, I'm afraid you won't be able to hear me." Zhang Xiaohua covered her ears and said, "Since you said so, I will have to pay more attention. If I can't hear little fish's cute voice in the future, what should I do?" Nie Qianyu's face reddened, and she almost spat out, but she immediately said, "Let's go, Big brother Ren. My father has been waiting for a long time. Didn't you want to go to the inner valley and learn alchemy? Let's go now." "Okay." Zhang Xiaohua slightly nodded. "Then let's go. As the younger generation, we shouldn't let the elders wait for too long." Hearing this, Nie Qianyu's heart was filled with sweetness. She was happier than being directly praised. Outside the peach blossom forest, Valley Master Nie was already standing with his hands behind his back. He looked at the two of them from afar as they chatted and laughed. There was an imperceptible smile at the corner of his mouth. Zhang Xiaohua approached and bowed. Valley Master Nie did not stand on ceremony and said with a smile, "Yesterday, I heard from Qing Xian that he was very reluctant to let you go and wanted to pass on his medical skills to you. Sigh, this disciple of mine is not young anymore, but the way she does things is a little pedantic. Medical skills can heal people, but not many people will benefit from it. On the other hand, the art of alchemy can benefit everyone, and it is also useful for the doctor's own cultivation. If this art of alchemy is useful for cultivation, how can I, as an elder, not teach you with all my heart? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Senior Brother Mu is a warm-hearted person. His reputation in Vow City isn't any worse than Uncle Niez. His martial arts aren't strong, but he has saved countless lives. This is something that young people like us should admire and learn from. After refining the alchemy, if I have time, I would like to seek advice from Senior Brother Mu. Oh, if there is anything I do not understand, I would like to seek advice from Uncle Nie. Seeing that his advice was ineffective, Valley Master Nie shook his head slightly and said, When I saw you before, I felt that you were very mature from your voice and the way you do things. Now that I see the passion and impulsiveness of a young person, it is rare. I will leave it to you. Nephew Ren, you must remember that there is an order in learning, there is a specialization in the profession. Do not neglect the essentials for some unattainable things. After hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart warmed. Even though Valley Master Nie's tone was obviously reprimanding, but there was more concern and worry in his tone. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, This nephew has learned and will remember it in his heart. Father, Nie Qianyu was unhappy and said, Brother Ren is kind and willing to save people. Look at what you are saying. You are making a fuss over nothing. Valley Master Nie smiled and said, Xiaoyu, he seemed to want to say something, but then thought of something and only shook his head. Seeing this, Nie Qianyu walked forward and hugged Valley Master Nie's arm and said coquettishly, Father, if you have something to say, just say it. Why are you being so secretive? Zhang Xiaohua knew Nie Qianyu, but he had only seen her calmness and intelligence. He had never seen her act like a little girl. He was dumbfounded. Isn't she just a 12-year-old child? Why did she say she was 16? Did she lie to me again? Valley Master Nie said dotingly, It's nothing. I just thought of the past. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Your brother Ren will laugh if he hears. As expected, Nie Qianyu obediently stopped asking. Thus, the three people left the peach forest and headed towards the inner valley. Speaking of the inner valley, Zhang Xiaohua had already scanned it with his spiritual sense on the second day after he had arrived at Rejuvenation Valley. He understood most of the things in the valley. Now that he had personally entered the valley, it was less mysterious. However, even though he had already scanned it with his spiritual sense, when he stood at the entrance of the valley and saw it with his own eyes, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion at the uncanny workmanship of nature. This was a huge valley surrounded by towering rock walls. There were no passageways leading down. Even if one had superb qigong, they wouldn't be able to move around freely. Moreover, as soon as they entered the valley, a warm fragrance hit them in the face, making them feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. The temperature in the valley was obviously different from the temperature outside. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and asked softly, Uncle Nie, this valley seems to. Chapter 451. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and asked, Uncle Nie, the temperature inside the valley seems to be a bit higher than outside. Is it because of alchemy? Valley Master Nie smiled and said, Nephew Ren is really attentive. The temperature in this season is exactly the same as outside the valley. I thought you couldn't feel it. In fact, if you come here in winter, you will clearly see the difference. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and somewhat understood. She said, Is the temperature inside the valley not the same as outside the valley? It's really like that. This valley is like spring all year round and the temperature is the same all year round. Otherwise, why would my Rejuvenation Valley be named Rejuvenation? Nie Qianyu said with a smile. The three people continued to move forward. Valley Master Nie introduced. This inner valley is quite large. It's more than 10 miles in all directions. There are countless rare herbs planted in it. 3 to 5 miles to the left of the valley entrance is a place that the disciples of the valley often go to. Further in is some primitive jungle where some birds and beasts live. Oh, the mountain villa's 4 odd beasts were found there. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. She had already used her divine sense to scan that place. The inside was overgrown with lush vegetation, and there were many wild birds and beasts. It seemed that it was also a rare place. Valley Master Nye pointed to the boundless medicinal field in front of them and said, "This is the core of my rejuvenation valley. There are all kinds of herbs planted here. Because the inner valley is like spring all year round, my rejuvenation valley's herbs are world famous. Of course, it is also these herbs that have created the reputation of my rejuvenation valley's alchemy." Speaking of this, Valley Master Nye's face was full of pride. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. She had stayed in Rejuvenation Valley for so long, of course. She knew its position in Jianghu. In the past, when O Yen of Huanxi Mountain Villa encountered a problem with herbs, didn't she also come to Rejuvenation Valley for help? However, Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy area was between the mountain walls of the inner valley. Her divine sense couldn't penetrate deep and she didn't know the contents. Looking at Valley Master Nye's appearance, he should be very powerful. Then, Zhang Xiaohua pointed to the mountain wall on the right and said with a smile, "Uncle Nye, I see many disciples going in and out of the mountain wall on the left. It must be where our Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy area is. But here? What's the use of silence?" Valley Master Nye looked at the stone wall on the right and then looked at Zhang Xiaohua. He said in a serious tone, "Nephew Ren, you are not an outsider, so there is no harm in telling you. The people who live in the stone wall on the left are all the previous generations of Rejuvenation Valley's experts. They are now old and have long stopped caring about affairs. They are living out their remaining years in this place that is like spring all year round." "I see." Zhang Xiaohua nodded thoughtfully. In fact, he had already seen it clearly when he was scanning with his spiritual sense, but he was not sure. Although Rejuvenation Valley wasn't a great sect, it still had a history of 1,000 years. It didn't make sense to say that there wasn't an expert overseeing the valley. However, Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the Misty School. The Misty School was a large sect with immortal inheritance. No matter what, they should have some foundation. Where were the experts of the previous generation? Why was it that even though the ethereal sect had been annihilated, there wasn't a single person standing up for them? It was really strange. Then, Uncle Nye, how many of our Rejuvenation Valley seniors are still living in the valley? Zhang Xiaohua asked casually. This Valley Master Nye was a little embarrassed. He looked at Nye Qianyu and said, "Nephew Ren, you are not an outsider, but this is our Rejuvenation Valley's secret." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood and said, "Uncle Nye, if it's a secret, it's better not to say it. Actually the climate in the valley is very pleasant. Moreover, in my Rejuvenation Valley, I don't dare to say anything else. But there are many herbs that can prolong one's life and nourish one's body. Therefore, there really are many seniors living here." In addition, Valley Master Nye said mysteriously, "Nephew Ren, don't look at my ordinary martial arts. Rejuvenation Valley also has its own unique skills. In the past, there were many top-ranked experts in the pugilistic world in our Rejuvenation Valley." He looked like he was showing off. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Nye Qianyu pointed to the herb garden not far in front and said, "Brother Ren, look, this is the main ingredient for refining the blood-replenishing pill. If it is a year old, it is not very useful. The blood-replenishing pill uses Gastrodia tuber that is more than 5 years old. The Rejuvenation Valley's climate is stable and is most conducive to the growth of herbs. Moreover, for some reason, the herbs in the inner valley grow better than those in the outer valley." Zhang Xiaohua walked closer and slightly released her divine sense. Of course, the qi of heaven and earth in the inner valley was more than 3 times that of the outer valley. How could these herbs not grow well? Looking at the terrain of the inner valley and the dense herbs, it was inevitable that the qi of heaven and earth could gather here. "That's right," Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized and said, "Valley Master Nye, why is the climate in the inner valley like this?" Valley Master Nye smiled but did not speak. Nye Qianyu said, "When Brother Ren enters this stone wall and sees how Rejuvenation Valley refine pills, you will naturally know. Below the stone wall on the left, There were dozens of small caves. Disciples of Rejuvenation Valley entered and exited from time to time. When they saw the Valley Master, they all bowed and saluted. Walking closer, Valley Master Nya pointed at these caves and said with a smile, "Nephew Ren, this is where Rejuvenation Valley refine pills. Why don't you guess why there are so many caves?" Zhang Xiaohua was startled. She thought for a moment and shook her head, saying, "I don't know that different caves have different functions." Nye Qianyu said, "Brother Ren, don't think too much. Just a simple guess and you will know." Zhang Xiaohua was about to shake her head when her mind lit up. She said with a smile, "Could it be that different pills are in different caves?" Nye Qianyu immediately applauded and said, "Like I said, Big Brother Ren is thinking too much. The way of alchemy is not as magical as what is written in the books. Big Brother Ren will definitely be able to guess it from a simple way of thinking." Not as magical as it is written in the books? Zhang Xiaohua was startled and a question arose in her heart. Could it be that Rejuvenation Valley's pill refining techniques were different from what was written in the books? When Valley Master Nye and Nye Qianyu led Zhang Xiaohua into a random cave, Zhang Xiaohua was immediately stunned by the scene in front of her. Yes, that's right. She stood there blankly and did not move at all. Valley Master Nye and Nye Qianyu did not find it strange when they saw this. They just quietly waited for her to react. After a long while, Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and asked with a wry smile, "Uncle Nye, this is the place you said to refine pills?" Then she said to Nye Qianyu, "This is the normal part of refining pills that you said?" Nye Qianyu said with a smile, "That's right. Refining pills is just like this. However, are you shocked by Rejuvenation Valley's generosity?" That's right, that's right. Zhang Xiaohua looked around carefully. She even released her divine sense and looked around again and again. Everyone, what do you think is the scene that Zhang Xiaohua saw? It actually made the successor of the immortal Dao Zhang Xiaohua, who had truly refined the fasting pill, so surprised. She saw that this was a rather large cave. It was slender and long. On the mountain wall in front of Zhang Xiaohua, there were more than 10 grooves. On each groove were cauldrons of different sizes, similar to the cauldrons in Zhang Xiaohua's purse. At this moment, a green-red flame was spitting out from under the cauldrons and was burning the cauldrons. Above the cauldrons, there was actually countless amounts of water vapor floating up. Was this brewing medicine or refining pills? It was no wonder that Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. "This is the difference you said to be from the books?" Zhang Xiaohua, who had regained her senses, turned to ask Nye Qianyu. Nye Qianyu nodded affirmatively. When Valley Master Nye saw this, he explained, "What is written in the alchemy books are all theories. In fact, many of them cannot be practiced. For example, it is impossible to freely control the temperature of the cauldrons." Looking at the green-red flame under the cauldrons, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense chased after it. After a while, she nodded slightly. Valley Master Nye continued, "Nephew Ren should have seen Qi Huang Courtyard's brewing medicine. Previously, we were also unable to control the temperature of the cauldrons. When it was casually burned, the medicinal herbs would turn into ashes. How could it be refined into pills? Therefore, with the help of the water, the essence of the medicinal herbs would be forced out. When the water dried up, the essence would also be left at the bottom of the cauldrons." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood and said, "Brewing medicine is to boil the medicinal power of the medicinal herbs in water. When the patient takes it, the patient will be cured. What is left at the bottom of the cauldron is the medicinal dregs." This so-called refining pill is only the medicinal herbs. There is no residue left. Oh, that's not right, Uncle Nya. Although the medicinal herbs are mostly the leaves and fruits of plants and are not as dry as medicinal herbs, there are still impurities. Is the essence left at the bottom of the cauldron the essence? Valley Master Nya pointed to the water vapor and said, "A lot of impurities have been boiled out with the water vapor. There are very few impurities left." In her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua could feel the vitality of the essence of the plants in the water vapor above the cauldrons. How could this be impurities? It was clearly the main component of the pill. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua understood why Nie Qianyu said that the Rejuvenation Valley's fasting pill could only cure hunger for 1 or 2 days. It turned out that the essence of the sealwort had been boiled away by the method of brewing medicine. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless and only murmured, "But, does the essence of the medicinal herbs also run away with the water vapor?" Valley Master Nie replied awkwardly, "This is inevitable. If you don't boil it in water, you won't get anything. If you boil it in water you can get some." At this time, Nie Qianyu said, "Big Brother Ren, don't you feel curious about the fire under the cauldron without using dry firewood?" Zhang Xiaohua immediately looked surprised and said, "Little fishy Nie, if you didn't mention it, I really wouldn't have cared. Now, tell me, where does this fire come from?" Nie Qianyu also looked proud and said, "Big Brother Ren doesn't know that there are many passages under this valley that lead directly to the underground earth fire. The flames that my Rejuvenation Valley uses to refine pills use the earth fire directly through these passages." "So it's like this," Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. "Then, is this the reason why the cauldron's temperature is not easy to control?" Valley Master Nie nodded and said, "Really, we can't use this earth fire. The cost of ordinary flames is too high. Although Rejuvenation Valley is rich, we can't not consider increasing our income and reducing our expenditure." Ah! Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Chapter 452. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw the steaming hot and misty interior of the cave. How was this refining pills? It was more like boiling pills. The 10 cauldrons in the cave were huge replicas of the boiling pots in Qihuang Courtyard. Sigh, people's imaginations were really endless. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Seeing Valley Head Nie's complacent expression and Nie Qianyu's proud expression, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't bear to discourage them. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua asked, "Uncle Nie, what kind of pills are being refined in this cave?" Nie Qianyu smiled and said, "Brother Ren, why don't you guess?" Zhang Xiaohua sniffed and said, "This cave is filled with the smell of Gastrodia elata. I remember that Gastrodia elata is the main ingredient in the blood-replenishing pill recipe. Presumably, the pills being refined here are the blood-replenishing pill." Valley Head Nie's eyes flashed with a satisfied light and said, "Nephew Ren guessed correctly. This blood-replenishing pill is a commonly used pill in the Jianghu and is also the flagship product of Rejuvenation Valley. The technique and process are also the most mature." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and carefully observed the operation of the Rejuvenation Valley disciple. She saw that the water in the cauldron in front of her was almost finished boiling. The disciple activated a mechanism at the groove beside the cauldron and the green-red flame immediately became much smaller. After a while, only the sticky essence at the bottom of the cauldron was left. The disciple adjusted the flame again and almost turned it off. Then, he dug at the bottom of the cauldron and the sticky essence fell into a box. The disciple reached out and took it from the bottom of the cauldron. Then, he skillfully used 3 fingers of his right hand to pinch it in a spoon. His fingers moved and a famous blood-replenishing pill from Rejuvenation Valley was formed. The disciple didn't even turn his head. With a wave of his hand, the pill was thrown into a small plate. The plate was already filled with pills of equal size. When the other disciples saw that the plate was full, they immediately replaced it with an empty plate. They brought the plate filled with pills to the side of the cave entrance. There were already several plates filled with pills. A few female disciples were busy putting the pills in the plates into the empty porcelain bottles. Zhang Xiaohua laughed in her heart. "Ha ha ha, I didn't think that the famous blood-replenishing pill in Jianghu would be refined like this." At this time, a person's image suddenly appeared in his mind. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but think, if that guy Ma Jing were to concoct this blood-replenishing pill, what kind of effect would it have? Ha ha ha. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua almost burst out laughing. Seeing this, Nie Qianyu asked in astonishment, "Big Brother Ren, is there something wrong with the refining of this blood-replenishing pill? Why do you look so?" Zhang Xiaohua covered his mouth and said with difficulty, "It's nothing, little you. I just thought of some ridiculous things." "Pay." Nie Qianyu couldn't help but spit. "What ridiculous things are you thinking of for no reason?" You're really not serious. Valley Master Nye scolded. Little you, your big brother Ren's own sect also has a place to refine pills. How can he give us any reasonable suggestions? Then, he looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a smile and said, Don't you think so? Nephew Ren. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head, thought for a while and said, Uncle Nye really thinks too highly of me. However, he immediately said, If Uncle Nye still has a free cave, I would like to practice. Valley Master Nye asked curiously, Can't you do it here? There should be a free cauldron over there. If Nephew Ren wants to learn, how about learning while refining pills there? Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, I've already looked carefully just now. Although Uncle Nye's pill refining process is similar to what is described in the book in theory, the operation is completely different. If it's just this pill refining, I've practiced a lot in Qihuang Courtyard and am confident that I can do it with ease. Then Nephew Ren's meaning is? I want to use Rejuvenation Valley's cauldron and this earth fire to refine the pill according to what is recorded in the book. Valley Master Nye nodded and said, Nephew Ren's thoughts are very correct. What others say can only be used as a reference. Everything has to be done yourself to understand the fundamentals. Then, with a face full of expectation, he said, Stones from other mountains can be used to polish jade. If Nephew Ren can combine his sex pill refining method with Rejuvenation Valleys and solve the problem of temperature control, it can be said to be a great kindness to Rejuvenation Valley. It can even be said to be an outstanding contribution to the entire Jianghu. Of course, Valley Master Nye's words revealed a kind of encouragement, like a senior's hope for a junior. Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved and she said with a smile, Uncle Nye is in the situation and may not be able to fully understand the reasons. I will definitely do my best and hope that I can give Uncle some advice. Nye Qianyu looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a smile. Others might not know, but she knew that her father had thought of countless ways to refine the pill, but he had always hit a wall. Although Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts were strong, she didn't think that she could surpass her father in the art of pill refining. However, Zhang Xiaohua was so dedicated to learning the art of pill refining, and even said that she would solve Rejuvenation Valley's problem. Although she knew that the possibility was not high, she still felt sweet in her heart. Valley Master Nye thought for a moment and ordered a disciple to bring over some ingredients for the blood-replenishing pill. He handed them to Zhang Xiaohua and said, Nephew Ren, since you don't want to stay here, then please follow me. After he finished speaking, he led Zhang Xiaohua and Nye Qianyu out of the cave and went towards the left side of the mountain wall. The left side of the mountain wall was different from the right side. There were only a few caves at the beginning and further in, there were some thatched cottages and small courtyards built on the mountain wall. It was unknown whether there were caves inside. Valley Master Nye didn't explain to Zhang Xiaohua and went straight into the first cave. Zhang Xiaohua followed in and looked around. This cave was the same as the one they had just entered, but it was much smaller and tidier. Nye Qianyu explained, Brother Ren, this cave is Father's alchemy room. Normally, the valley's disciples are not allowed to enter without permission. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and continued to walk forward. At the end of the alchemy room, there was a row of 3 cauldrons placed in a groove. The one in the middle was slightly larger and the 2 beside it were smaller. Walking closer, Valley Master Nye smiled and said, Nephew, this is where this old man usually performs alchemy. The earth fire here is much purer than other places, and the firepower is much stronger. More importantly, it is much easier to control. Zhang Xiaohua cursed in her heart. What's the use of the earth fire for decocting pills? It's just boiling water. No matter how well you control it, it will only make the water boil earlier. Valley Master Nye walked to the front of the groove and opened the mechanism of the earth fire. Sure enough, what came out was a cyan flame. The quality of the flame was much better than before. Then, Valley Master Nye explained how to use the mechanism and the cauldron. He smiled and said, Nephew Ren, the art of alchemy should be practiced by yourself. Nephew Ren has read many books and presumably, you already have a card up your sleeve. If you want to try it out, then use this blood-replenishing pill as a practice pill. I still have some matters to attend to in the outer valley, so I won't teach you step by step. Xiao Yu has been practicing alchemy with me since young and is already proficient. Let her watch over you. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, I don't dare to trouble Uncle Nye too much. If you have something to do, then go ahead. Valley Master Nye looked at Nye Qianyu and said, if the things in the inner valley are useful, then let your big brother Ren use them. Teach him with all your heart. After saying that, he deliberately winked at her. Nye Qianyu blushed and said, I know. Father, you go ahead. Leave this to me. Valley Master Nye laughed and swaggered away. When Valley Master Nye walked out of the alchemy room, Zhang Xiaohua threw the herbs in her hand to the ground and walked to the groove. She carefully observed the mechanism of the fire-spitting mechanism. She enlarged and then reduced the cyan flame before carefully observing the cauldron. This cauldron was very similar to the one in Zhang Xiaohua's purse. It was just that there were two protrusions on the outside of the cauldron which looked very abrupt. Looking inside the cauldron, the inner walls were smooth but there were no slots for primordial stones. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and carefully scanned the cauldron. She didn't find any fluctuations of primordial qi. It seemed that this cauldron wasn't used by the Tao of Immortality but was truly a product of the Tao of Martial Arts. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a little confused. The internal strength and pressure points she encountered before were all Tao of Martial Arts that imitated the Tao of Immortality. They all had extremely effective power. Why did this alchemy technique directly become pill frying when it reached the Tao of Martial Arts? But in the records of Rejuvenation Valley, it didn't specifically say that the temperature of Mi Gao's alchemy couldn't be controlled. Of course, there was an essential difference between Tao of Martial Arts and Tao of Immortality. That was that the foundation of Tao of Immortality's alchemy was the incantation. But Tao of Martial Arts didn't have such a saying. Tao of Martial Arts only refined the essence of the herbs. But even so, one couldn't directly change the incantation to frying. On the side, Nye Qianyu saw that Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought and asked in a low voice, Big Brother Ren, do you need me to add water for you? I'll tell you the steps of the operation while boiling the water. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and shook her head, saying, Are these two protrusions the places where I inject internal strength to control the temperature? Nye Qianyu said, Big Brother Ren, are you really going to use the ancient method? It's really not easy to control the temperature. However, she immediately thought that her father couldn't control it well. Perhaps his internal strength wasn't strong enough. Ran Baqian might not necessarily be unable to do it. She immediately said, Of course, Big Brother Ren's internal strength is superb, so it might not be difficult. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and asked, How can I inject internal strength into these two protrusions and even control the temperature? Only when one's internal strength is cultivated to the stage of perfection can it leave the body. Nye Qianyu explained, Big Brother Ren, have you forgotten? Didn't I tell you before that the armament refining sect can refine weapons that can increase one's inner strength? This cauldron for refining pills was specially made by the armament refining sect for my Rejuvenation Valley. As long as one injects inner strength into the protrusion, one's inner strength can leave the body and control the temperature in the cauldron. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. The way of immortality was to control the amount of heaven and earth yuan qi in the cauldron to control the flame and temperature of the cauldron. The way of martial arts was to directly use internal energy to control the cauldron to control the temperature. However, one was to control the foundation of the flame, while the other was to isolate the flame. The difference was obvious. Please vote. Come and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.